Good morning. Today is Wednesday, November 30th, 2022. And this is the meeting of the St. Louis Board of Aldermen Streets, Traffic, and Refuse Committee meeting. The meeting is called to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Vaccaro.
Present.
Alderwoman Howard.
Present.
Alderwoman Boyd.
She'll be here later.
Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Present.
Alderwoman Peel. Chair Tyus.
Present.
Alderman Boyd. Alderwoman Boyd. And Alderman Bosley. We have 4 present. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
So the next order of business is the approval of minutes. But before we do this, I want to take a point of personal privilege. I got a note last night from Lisa McNichols about her leaving. I want you to know how sad that makes me. When I got here in 1991, there were 2 people that are still here. That is the clerk, who was the 18th Ward alderman, and then Lisa McNichols. So over the years, we begged. Lisa could have been the clerk. She could have been the assistant clerk. She liked her job, which I always respect of people. She liked what she was doing, so she didn't want to move. But I want to tell you what a joy it's been to work with her, how professional she's been. She knows a lot of things. She doesn't mind rolling up her sleeves and getting things done. If that means moving boxes, she does that. I'm kind of that kind of person too. I raise a lot of heck, but I'm also that person will clean alleys and roll up my sleeves and do what needs to be done. And so I'm not going to make a sexist remark and say that that's what women do. But if I was thinking out loud, I might say something like that. But I just really want to thank Lisa for her all her years here and her service to the Board of Aldermen. And I know we will get to say some things tomorrow, but today is her last day, and that really makes me so sad. If I could find a way to keep her a little longer, I would. I tell her that all the time. You're really not leaving. We're going to find another spot for you. I've been in denial for a long time now. So I cannot believe this day has gone. She's a really, besides being a great worker, she's also a great person. She cares about each one of us. She doesn't get in the middle of our battles or anything like that. If you ask her to do something, she's going to do it. So we have been very fortunate to have her. And history is something that you need when you have legislative bodies. And Lisa has history. She knows how to go get things. And she's been trying to train other people, which is good. When people leave and they have history that goes back 30, 40 years, and then you don't train anybody else, it's a big shock when you get here and that person is no longer there and people don't know where to go. So I just want to send out my thanks to Lisa for all her hard work and everything she's done, and say how much I have enjoyed working with her and how much I've learned from her and appreciate her. And if you decide you don't want to quit, it's still not too late. You can withdraw everything that you said and we can just put you right back in your position. Or if you want to come and do a different position, I'm sure we can find something, because you are a great person, a great worker, and I appreciate you. Okay, and with that, we'll go back to the regular order of business, which is the approval of minutes. I'd entertain a motion that we approve the minutes of Wednesday, November 22nd, 2022.
I'll move.
Second.
Okay, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll? I see my vice chairs here.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Bosley.
Aye.
Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Peel. Chair Tyus.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Peel. We have 5 aye votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion to approve the minutes of Wednesday, November 22nd, 2022. I want to take a minute to now make an announcement. I am forming a subcommittee Alderwoman Howard had a very great idea about parking for people who are downtown. I'm sorry I was sick, so I got behind the 8 ball, but I'm going to be sending out a letter to the treasurer and to the head of personnel. And Alderwoman Howard is going to be in charge of that subcommittee. And we're going to look at how we can make it fair for the people who work downtown, because we have parking, as I understand it, out at the airport. I probably will send a letter to Rhonda also. And so if you are interested in working with her, please let her know, because I think this is something important as we struggle to try to keep good employees. Anything that we can do to offer them benefits and offer them the ability to make up for the ever increasing cost of things out there, buy groceries and things like that, we should do. So if you're interested in working with that, let her know and let me know. And then she is totally in charge of it. So she'll be running it. And she'll keep me abreast of what's going on.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'm
All
sorry.
right.
I got a new phone. I got all new devices, people. I hate having to learn how to do things, okay? I got a new iPad, a new phone, and boy, it's I get comfortable when I already know how to use my devices. So just a minute while I try to turn this phone down. It's not turning down. Oh, there it is. Okay, here. All right, that should get it. Okay, we don't have any board bills. We don't have any resolutions. Before us here are Jamie Wilson and Kent Flakes, who I'm going to swear in. I've had a number of requests from all of you all, rightfully so, about what's going on with 50/50 sidewalk, what's going on with ward capital funds, street paving, street cleaning, lighting. The whole street thing has been a ongoing dissertation from many different aldermen about what was going on. A little over a year or so ago, we had these two gentlemen, and I guess when Ms. Williams had just started, I can't remember if she was here or not, Bethany, the director, talking about what had happened with the 50/50 sidewalk, which is really one of the first main concerns, because so many people had put so many large amounts of money into it, and then they hadn't got the sidewalks. I uncharacteristically backed off for a long time because I wanted to give them a chance to give us a report of what has happened with that money. As we know, somebody disappeared, or as we were told, somebody disappeared. But I haven't heard anything back, and it's been over a year, and it's not fair to the many aldermen. And so I wanted these gentlemen to come back to explain to us what happened. Did we ever find the monies? Same thing with ward capital funds. And then other things about why street paving, why that hasn't happened, what's going on with street cleaning and other things. But I wanted to start with 50/50 sidewalk, because when I see people have put $100,000 in a couple of years in a row, that money ought to be someplace. It takes a lot of delving into what has happened. I wasn't here when 50/50 sidewalk started, because I came in 91 and was already going, but we only used to get $70,000 a year. So, and Wally Holes, I think, was running the program then, but I was here when the ward capital. So I know exactly when that started in 1994. And I am on my way to having the report. I already have a report pretty much from 94 to 2003. And then I picked back up in 13. So I'm going to work with the budget department, and I'm going to know every penny of the money. And then we're going to go through every year about what happened with that money, what happens when aldermen leave. Do you give them an update of what's going on? That's good if you have a good relationship with the previous alderman. If you don't, then does that money just go out into space? Ward capital money was supposed to be in each ward account. When I got back here, I discovered that they had stopped doing it, and they had started putting it in a giant fund. I've been trying since then to find out who did that, because the ordinance specifically says it's supposed to be kept in account 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, blah, 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 through 28. So I'm pained that has not happened. I'm going to insist that we're going to talk to the treasurer, bring him in here to explain to us, has it been put back? Why it's not where it's supposed to be? I called at that time the comptroller, and then at that time the treasurer was Tashara Jones. I called both of them, and nobody can tell me what happened, but I do know that the ordinance actually requires, which made it much easier than just putting it in a bulk account to track it. It also was supposed to be getting dividends and paid out in interest. And back right before I left this board in 2003, I asked a magical question about, well, hey, if we got these funds sitting up here, what happened to our interest? And they said, oh, you have it. So I dug back from 2003, the amounts of money that they said we had in ward accounts with interest, and it was a substantial amount. So if somebody then took our funds out and put it in a big bulk account and didn't give us interest, somebody needs to explain that, and then why it hasn't been put back in all this time. I was just hoping that I would not have to have hearings, that somehow this would all be sorted out and they could come back with some kind of report. If I have to, I will ask the comptroller if we can have an outside audit of this. This is it's a lot of money, and every alderperson has a right, whether they're going to come back or not, to know where their funds are and how it's been treated. I know several times the mayors took the money and they weren't supposed to. It's specifically in the original ordinance about the ward capital funds that is not supposed to be used for other things. I know the former Mayor Slay took it, and then former Mayor Cruzen took it one time, which I don't think, and then last time that it got taken, and I don't know if this one actually got moved, was the president put one of our bills on the informal calendar, and that was the budget, and it had the ward capital money in it for some reason, and that money then just went to the budget went into effect. So those are all the things I've been tracing and investigating and trying to figure out what happened, because every ward should have as much money as should originally have been awarded them. And if we need to go through that money and resort it and put them back into individual accounts, so that if you're here or not, you can let people know this is what was here, or you could get it spent. And then maybe we need to have something that says, if you allocate it, then it's allocated and needs to be done. Because normally I'll tell you what happens. The next person comes along and they may or may not agree. But at this point, since we're going to a whole different session, I would support saying, if you put that money up and you're the alderperson, that we have some kind of ordinance says that should not be changed. That should be completed. So with that, I'm going to swear the two gentlemen in, and then we're going to have them explain to us what has been going on with 50/50 Sidewalk. I know they put a new person in, but that person didn't have anything to do with what had happened before. So that's why I didn't call him in. And then we will, of course, have as many questions for the people on the committee and the people off the committee as we need to. Good morning, Mr. Wilson and Mr. Flake. If you all could unmute, I need to swear you in. Normally we have what's called a public hearing procedure. This is really not the public hearing. We don't have any people from the outside. So I don't need to read this because you are witnesses that I called before this committee, but I do need you to raise your right hand, and then you can, and depending on if you swear or affirm, I need to, for you to say, I'm asking you, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Swear.
Mr. Flake?
I do.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Mr. Wilson, you were the director when we, maybe you were the director. I don't know when we had that meeting back then, but I know you have been the director for a long time. Can you and or Mr. Flakes tell me what is going on with the 50/50 sidewalk money, and did we ever get that straight?
I think for some that don't know, just recap it real quick. So we had, and you alluded to some of this before, but we had a 50/50 project manager here for some time, actually, in that role. I don't know if it was three plus years.
Right.
And it was right when COVID rolled around. This person ultimately ended up getting terminated for job abandonment. So massive step. I think that's when we met with you or had the phone call with you that this person worked for Kent. So he was going to have to dig in to see where he was, what he'd been up to, because that was, as his title was, he was the project manager for it. So it was kind of all operating under him. So in order to proceed any further, I believe Kent stated that he needed to first figure out where we were before we did any more. it's great if he did everything right and everything was rolling good, but if it wasn't, we didn't want to lop any more on top of that. So he was going to take the massive step of digging into what's been done, what still had to be done, and where each of the wards are kind of line in terms of their to-do list. But again, that's a massive task that thankfully when the new director came in, she filled that role with Zach Fortune, who you mentioned, and he's picked up that effort from Kent. I honestly don't know. I haven't had the involvement to know where sidewalks are these days, but I know that Zach that is solely his scope of services now as that project manager to dig into each of those wards and see where we're at. But I couldn't speak to exactly where we're at with it now without having him talk about it. I just don't have that exposure right now.
Okay, so then when the new director came in, you basically went back, you went to being a commissioner of traffic and what is it, lighting and?
Yeah, I'm in the traffic division, so I'm the commissioner of traffic. So we have signing, striping, lighting, traffic signals. That's our scope.
Right.
And
Okay.
sidewalks are under the director's office.
Right. Okay. But I just know originally I was talking to you, so I didn't want to leave you out if you had anything that you could tell me about what had happened. Okay. And the new director brought in Zachary Fortune, right? Is that right, Mr.?
Yes. Sorry, I didn't mute. Yes.
Right. Okay, well then, we may not need you much unless some people have some questions, but first I'm gonna address Mr. Flake and ask him, can you tell me what happened from the last time we met about over a year ago with 50/50 sidewalk, and we ever found out what happened to this? Because let me just tell you, what I got from the city is that we were sued for non-payment by some contractors of concrete of non-payment. And so when I hear, because I sent out a email to the alderman and got a lot of response back that I put in this money 1 year, then I put it in again and I never got my sidewalks done. What's going on with that? And did we ever get some kind of handle on what had happened with that money?
Yeah, with that was one particular contractor. And what that contractor did was they went above and beyond on the cost of their contract. I can't remember what the exact dollar amount was, but they went over by almost 20% without the city's authority or the city authorizing them to do so. And of course, they finalized their contract, and then about 6 months later, they brought a bill in stating that they were not paid for this additional work. City councilor's office and our inspectors went out to those sites and figured out most of those jobs they were already paid for, so they were trying to double bill. Eventually, our city councilors, not sure what the legal term was, but and then ended up being dropped in court.
Okay, it was dismissed, or they probably did a motion to dismiss, and it was probably dismissed then. Okay, so they double billed. So then the city the city attorneys, counselors would have a whole record of what happened with that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Now, the issue with that and why it was a big deal is because they were using subcontractors and they were not paying their subcontractors at any point during their contract, which was also a big to do. There was at least a trucking company and a concrete company that, even though our contractor, the city's contractor, had been paid throughout, not gonna say monthly, but maybe bi-monthly basis, they were not paying their subs. And that's really what got that heated up from the get-go.
So did the subs then put a lien and sue the city? Did they do a subcontractor's lien? Do you know?
I think the city, I think the city councilor probably knows more about this than.
Okay, then I will find out, but so.
But I believe those contractors were made whole. The subcontractors were made whole.
So when you say they went above and beyond, was there any work they did that was not authorized? Do you know?
All of it was authorized, but most of it was the double billing.
Okay. Okay, so by when you say it's authorized, what does that mean? Does that mean, because I know I would always give my list of this is who I'm paying for, this is who I'm doing my 50-50. And I was even able to send that to you because I've been doing that for 30 years. When I first got here, they billed me the first year for some other wards. And I was like, okay, I better know about this. So I have always just turned in, this is my list. If you do anything else, I'm not paying for it. That's you doing it. So do we submit a list to the contractor saying, these are the sidewalks that you're supposed to be doing?
Yes, and you typically, the aldermen see that also. I'm not sure how it went with the previous program manager, but I know when I actually had the sidewalk program, and Kim Hagley had the sidewalk program, Zach had it for a short moment after that.
Right.
Prior to the last program manager, we would always submit a list to you stating this is what we plan on doing when we are in your ward. And that is the exact, almost, you guys or the aldermen get a kind of shortened version of it. More just addresses, etc. The contractor has, it's this many square feet of sidewalk, this many feet of curb, this is what we're considering tree damage, maybe a driveway, maybe if there's a water stop box or in the sidewalk area. All of that is what the contractor gets, and that's what they're expected to do when they are on that location. Plus, as most of you know, these locations are painted several times. We go out originally, we paint white, so the homeowner or resident can see exactly what we're planning on doing. And then we go back for the contractor and we paint that in orange, so the contractor knows exactly what they're supposed to be touching. Every once in a while, there'd be a slab, extra slab on the left side or the right side, but it's 90% accurate when we give the contractor that list.
Okay, you just mentioned a couple of things. I know about the tree damage. I wrote that that ordinance years ago because we used to plant trees and people would, then they would have their sidewalks tore up and they would be so irritated because then we would tell them they would have to pay to replace the sidewalk. And so it's a very little ordinance, probably about 3/4 of a page that I did many, many years ago. And I still get people saying, oh, how they love it. In fact, Jim Suleman was the director of streets then, and he came down and said, I didn't even call him. I want to testify because that was really, really unfair that we planted trees. And then when the trees tore things up, we told the people who lived there that they had to pay for it. So we then said that they no longer had to pay for that. So I know about that, but you also said something about a stop box and something else. Do we pay if there's a stop box or something else that's damaged? And can you?
We pay, the citizen does not. But as part of the sidewalk replacement, sometimes either that stop box needs to be replaced because most of them are cast iron. By the time you break out the sidewalk, that cast iron is going to get broke. So we pay the contractor. It's fairly minimal. I think it's like $30-$35 to replace that stop box and put a new one in, so it's actually flush with the new sidewalk.
Okay. And then I thought you said something else, because I know about this, like I said, the tree damage and stop box. Was there something else that we pay for?
Oh, there's a ton of things. So we pay for saw cutting. So if we come to the edge of the property line, the neighbor's not a participant, we have what we call dummy joints, and we have what we call real sidewalk joints. So a dummy joint is just etched into the concrete, and it's not really a joint. A joint would typically have what we call expansion joint or expansion joint filler in that area. If we come to the property line, we'll actually, and it's a dummy joint, so it's really concrete on both sides. We'll actually saw cut across there, so we're not intruding necessarily on the neighbor's property. There's other times we would saw cut too, but that's typically the biggest part of our saw cut. We pay for granular backfill. So if we remove a sidewalk, the contractor will put new rock in for a sub base, which is needed. With these sidewalks, some of them, probably being up to 120, 140 years old sometimes. there's not much underneath them other than just dirt. A lot of times they'll use, it's the old coal cinders in there as a base material, but our contractors almost always have to put more rock in there, and it's another item we pay for.
Okay,
Sometimes you have water meters that have to be adjusted. That's also paid for. There's, actually, give me just a second.
if you don't have to give me the exhaustive list. If you have it written down someplace, I wouldn't mind you sharing that with me and the committee, so that would just appraise us, or if you could put it together list. You don't have to do that right now, okay?
Yep.
All right, now what about, then I'm gonna let the committee ask you any questions before we get into this whole money thing, if they have any. What about, I know we used to do smooth concrete, and then we did aggregate. More and more I'm hearing people say that they got bids just for aggregate. Did we stop doing the other kind of concrete, do you know?
That actually happened whenever I was in charge of the program. We switched over to, I would say, at least 90% exposed aggregate, unless it did not make sense. Every once in a while, you'll be at a property and the 3 properties next to it are all what we call white concrete. That's just a bright white.
Right.
It's typically got some swirlies on it and then a picture frame around that. The problem I had whenever I took over the program is almost every site that we went to was having some sort of graffiti to it. And that was number 1. And number 2.
I'm sorry, did you say some sort of graffiti in the?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, somebody, young, old, middle, would go out there and of course start writing their names on it. We had, essentially hate speech in some of them. And we were spending more time trying to go back and fix that. And of course, the contractor is going to charge you to go back. And the other side of that is that if my 2 neighbors' sidewalks were poured 10 years ago, the bright white sidewalk stands out like a sore thumb. And if you pour the exposed aggregate there, it doesn't look the same, but it blends in a lot better.
So was there a substantial difference in price in aggregate and white smooth?
At that time, I'd have to look to see what it is now, because we just had new contracts come in a couple months ago. But back then, I think it was 25 cents different a square feet. The concrete back then was also, I think, $4.25 a square foot. So it was changed. It was $4 to $4.25 or $4.25 to $4.50.
Okay.
Now we're, I think, $13 a square foot, so the difference is probably a little more substantial, just because the prices are way different than they were 7-8 years ago. But I don't think it's more than 10%.
Okay.
And
Great.
and you eliminate the graffiti and any of the other issues, and most people like the exposed better.
Okay, but if people wanted to still get the smooth white concrete, do they still have a choice?
We don't give them a direct choice on our letter, but on our letter, it says if you have any questions, comments, etc. And we get a lot of phone calls, because some of these residents have been on this program for a while. So when they receive that letter from us, first of all, most of them think it's a bill, and it's not a bill. It's just, if you want to participate, this is the price for you to participate. So several of those people call. And if somebody wanted to have white concrete, they could call Zach or one of his inspectors, and we would change that. But on that same note, if you have exposed aggregate that was put in last year on both the right and left side of your house, and for some reason you just want to have white concrete in the middle, we're at least going to try to talk you out of that.
Okay, but they have the choice to say that's what they want.
Yes.
So you just hit on a sore spot for me, because it took me, when I came back, 7 or 8 years to get mine, and I just was on him so much. I don't understand what's costing and why it's taking so long. When I was a new person and Mary Ross was the chair of streets, she and I co-authored a bill that made us have to have more than one contractor because, you know, it's a limited time when you can lay sidewalk. And so some part of the town was always mad because they were not getting their part done. And it used to go a lot faster because we had a lot less money. And so we said, we passed it, and I'm gonna pull the board bill, send it to you. You probably know about it, that you had to have 2 contracts. Well, lo and behold, that worked for a few years. And then we looked up and the same person had both contracts. So what goes on that we don't have several, because I heard that we also went to maybe even 3 contracts. So why is it taking so long to get sidewalks done when people put up their money so far in advance?
I'm gonna say most of that was the previous program manager. Prior to that, Kim Hagley was having sidewalks turn around in 12 to 18 months. I would expect once Zach gets this list cleaned up, he's gonna be between 9 and 15 months, something like that. As far as the contracts go, we've fought and fought and fought and fought and fought with this. We've tried smaller contracts, so smaller companies, because they've got to be insured. They got to meet all the city standards. We've tried smaller contracts, so it was easier for them to get insured. We worked with I forget the name of them, Kwame. It's Kwame. He works with a bunch of smaller contractors, trying to get something moving there. Long story short, most of those contracts that did exist failed. They came in, worked for 2 weeks, figured out they bid way too low, and they couldn't do it. A few years ago, yeah, we had probably, I think, 4 or 5 contractors. Might be more years than that, but let's say 7 or 8 years ago, I think we had 4 contractors all pouring sidewalks all at the same time. That was a pretty good year because everybody was getting sidewalks done. They were everywhere. And at that time, we had a pretty significant list to work down also. To the contractor side is it's essentially that. It depends on who bids. Some of these contractors will come in and it's a BPS bid contract, and you'll have one company at, let's say, $13 a square foot. You have somebody that comes in, they don't really want the work, but if we're willing to pay them a whole bunch of money for it, they'll jump right on it and they'll bid $25 a foot or square foot. Don't think it makes sense to use that person necessarily, because I think that they are, if it was 10% difference and we had 2 contracts out and one was 13 and one was 14, that would probably make sense. If you have 2 contracts out and one's 13 and one's 26, it doesn't make any sense to take the one for 26. But if they were close, and we've done it before, where we would actually take not the lowest bidder because we already had 2 contracts out. One contractor had both those contracts. Third contractor, or on the 3rd contract, that same contractor had the first 2 contracts, won the 3rd contract, and we actually did not let them have it because there was a 5-10% difference, and we wanted 2 contractors out there working.
Okay. All right. You said that a few years ago, we had several contractors. If you could please take note, I'd like to know what year that was and who the contractors were. You can get back and get that to me and I'll get it to the committee, okay? And so when we do a bid, and I might need to talk to Rich Bradley, I did invite him to come. He may hop in on here. When we do a bid for a sidewalk, And I know I'm purposely not saying the person or the company that we've used since the beginning. I'm not trying to drag them into anything. They do a great job. They did my sidewalks and they've always done a good job. But I've always advocated, the reason why we wanted more is because it takes too long if you only have one. And so I know it sounds good for you when we don't want to pay too much extra, but for the aldermen, they're getting kicked in their behind by their constituents when you tell them, okay, I put you on the sidewalk or I pushed it, and then 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, it might save money, but if your kid is hungry, you pay more money for it, okay? And I'm not a big advocate because I'm very conservative about money. So I will fix socks, and my husband's like, we can afford to buy new socks. So that's the cheap I am. But have we not thought about how we could train more people to be in this process? Okay, when you have had the contract forever, and I know the people who have it now have had it over 30 years, probably closer to 40. That makes it so, of course, they know exactly what they need to bid, but it makes them a monopoly. Have we not looked into a way where we could be inclusive and bring other people into this bidding process, even as the subcontractors under them? Because and nothing wrong with the people who do it at the company, but it still is hard on having just one person do the whole city in a limited time.
Yes, and that's a good point. And I kind of brought this up a minute ago, talking about some of these smaller contractors that we brought in. I'll put it this way, most of those that have failed, at least probably 20-25% of their organization either went to the company we're talking about or went to another company.
Okay.
That also has had many of these contracts. So they kind of tend to swallow up the little guys, at least as far as, I mean, it's hard anywhere to get a concrete finisher. I mean, even with the street division, right now, I've got 1 out of 3 concrete finishers. And it's very hard to do concrete work when you only have 1. You really need 2. Because it's kind of like doing laundry. You put your stuff in the wash. Eventually, when it's done, you put it in the dryer. But you need that second shift or whatever. So like with concrete, they go out and typically pour it. Well, it's not ready to be finished until it sets up a little bit.
Right.
And it depends on the weather, but 15 minutes later, 45 minutes later, you need that guy to be able to, or that person to be able to follow behind that and actually be able to finish it. Without that second person, that one employee is going to sit there for a good couple hours to do 1 sidewalk when they should be taking care of 12, 15 locations today. So, like I said, we've worked with Kwame, anybody else we can work with, trying to get other companies into this process. A lot of companies don't want to deal with the city processes and our bidding procedures. So it's really, I mean, it's for them to go do, say, a quick trip concrete. There's a lot less strings attached than our bid processes.
And that's what I mean about, is there something the city could do? I know small contractors, you can't afford to wait however long we take to pay people. So it seems like that we're not trying to get more people in because we need to streamline the process for smaller people, or we're never going to get anybody else. So that's just a point in I don't know if that's in the street department or if that is in BPS, but the process needs to be looked at to me. And we said that. I'm 30 years later saying the same thing. Okay, I was 30 years younger, and here I am 30 years later saying the very same thing, and we've not done anything to do that. And that is not going to solve the problem. What is our season of when we pour concrete?
Our contractors, or our contractor at this moment, but our contractors can really pour concrete just about any day, as long as the temps either stay above freezing or stay below freezing. And the problem with that is it can't you can't pour a sidewalk at, I don't know, noon today. Today's probably not a good example, but at 35 degrees. And then tonight it goes to 28. If you do that, it will crack and it will fall apart. These contractors have blankets. They can put the blankets on there. They work. Contractors don't necessarily like to use them because it's more work and more laborious for them. But as long as it stays above 32 or stays below 32, they can pour. It's just whenever you start doing that fluctuation above and below 32. Typically, I mean, in the past, we've had contractors pick our work up just to have for winter work. Because they are bigger companies. They don't want to lay people off over the winter time because not many people want to pour concrete in the winter time. Plus, it's very questionable how many days out of January you're actually going to be able to pour concrete. So we have had many, or at least a couple contractors in the past that jumped on that so they could keep their employees employed. So come March, April, May, they didn't have to go find 5 more concrete finishers because I laid these employees off, and now they found somebody else to go work for.
Okay, and so if it stays 20, you can just pour concrete all through January and December. Is that what you're telling me in February?
As long as they use blankets and you're not going above and below freezing.
Okay, what about rain? Does rain affect pouring concrete?
Absolutely. Typically, if they know it's going to rain or snow, they're not going to pour.
Well, they have blankets, so why wouldn't that protect that? Explain it to me. Because I always never let them, I never let them pour my concrete in the winter, because I always thought if you had it in the winter, it would crack. So you're telling me something new. So what's different about rain or snow?
Well, it's mostly on the finish. It's hard to finish concrete if it's raining. It won't dry out enough. It won't set up enough to actually get a good finish on it, whether it be exposed or the swirl and picture frame.
Okay. All right, I'm going to stop now. If anybody, and then we're going to get into where the money. So if anybody on the committee has any questions of Mr. Wilson or Mr. Flake. Alderman Vaccaro.
Yeah, Ken, I'm just curious. The company that double billed, are we still using them?
No. And they'll probably never be used again.
Okay, and so you don't have to make it public, but I would appreciate text me. I'm just curious who that is. So if you could text me that, that would be a curious question. And the other issue, of course, that I'm having right now, it has to do with leaf pickup, but I mean,
We'll get to that.
okay, and we'll get to that. But text me the other. It's just more curious. I don't think it needs to be public. We've been sued already. I don't want to be sued twice. So
Absolutely.
anyway, so I guess, well, that was my only question on this subject. So I'll wait for the next subject then.
Okay, Alderwoman Schweitzer, I saw your hand.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thanks to Jamie and Kent for being here. I have definitely been pushing hard on my sidewalks getting done in the 13th Ward. I know Kent's gotten definitely a lot of emails from me. And I was really concerned about any allegations that there's somehow money that's not there or hasn't been used responsibly. So, I made sure to reach out once kind of that all was being talked about. Did look back on the 5 years of 13th Ward sidewalk requests and saw that the list that had been gotten previously before me was different every year and not fully funded every year, which meant that sidewalks that were requested by people in the 13th Ward were literally just falling off the list. And by that, I mean, if they weren't done, they didn't show up on the next year's list as sort of an aggregate of all the sidewalks that needed to get done. Obviously, that was mismanagement of the program, and I'm glad that the person who was doing that is not not with us anymore, because that is very problematic. If an alderperson thinks that they're, saving up for a list that's never the same, and it's not being, adequately explained to the alderperson what actually needs to get done. So that was something that was really concerning to me when I first became an alderperson, and something that I'm so grateful to have Zach working on. But it turned out that the 13th ward had about $400,000 of outstanding sidewalk work from the last 5 years. That's very problematic, because we only get, as a ward, about a little bit over 300,000 since I've been an alderperson a year. So it doesn't even, can't do anything else besides sidewalks if that's what you were going to allocate money towards. And so, the first year that I was an alderperson, with the ward allocations, allocated $150,000, which was, or $130,000 at first, which was what was said to me as what was needed in the ward. That was the full list that I got when I became an alderperson. And then when I started talking to, when constituents would reach out, it was clear that they weren't on the list that I was given, but they've been waiting for 5 years. So I kept adding more and more money to the allocation that I was given. And at that point, I started asking questions about, how are these lists? How are these people on the list, but not on the list I have? What happened? And that's when I, found out that there were all the people still waiting, and who weren't, on the list. And I think when, that's when Zach came in and started kind of fixing the problem. So from my understanding from Zach, that is that the, I think there's someone getting.
Excuse me,
Oh, it's okay.
somebody, we have back feed.
Thank you, Chairwoman. So my understanding from Zach now is that he's meeting with the contractor later this week, and that hopefully 13th ward work should start soon. But it's only $150,000 of that work that's starting soon. And there's, like I said, $400,000 more work to do. I'm really glad that there's ARPA funds allocated for sidewalk work, or not allocated as of yet, but on the bill that we'll be considering from Alderman Bosley to allocate money towards sidewalks. I am very concerned about any money that could be moving that's not moving, because, we have plenty to do in the city of St. Louis. And when money gets held up and isn't being spent, that means very directly that our constituents aren't getting the services that they pay for. So that's a huge concern of mine, and I think everyone's. So with that said, what is there anything that you need from aldermen that is not that needs to happen in order for work to start? Is there anything? Because my understanding is that I've allocated things. What is there a holdup? Is there a roadblock? Please, be candid about what we need to do, because our citizens can't wait any longer for services.
Yep, I'd like to touch on one point and then kind of circle back to that one. Yes, when Zach and I started digging through the data and figuring out that if a ward only half funded their list, the other half the list just disappeared. That didn't make any sense. And once we figured that out, we were both kind of in shock and disappointed. And also, you had, or whatever ward it was, had a list of 30 that funding was requested for. And then you dig into CityWorks and start looking, and there's not 30, there's 300 requests. Which, if an alderman knows there's 300, that's one thing. And we can work on those over the next 4 years or 5 years or 10 years. But if I tell you there's only 30 when there's 300, that's a problem. As far as getting things moving, our capital meetings now are typically held a little bit later than they used to be held. They used to be held in like February, maybe March. Now I think we're back to June or July-ish, maybe May, depending on the year. When it was February, it was kind of a big problem. So we'd sit with each and every alderman in February. Money's not allocated till July. Come July, we have to bid out a contract through the Board of Public Service, and it's got to go through, first of all, the bid process, and then it's got to go through MBE, WBE, make sure everything, every other duck is in a row. And even if you put that contract into play as far as the paperwork, because the money doesn't really hit July 1st, it usually hits a week or two after July 1st. Even if you put that money or that paper into play at that point, typically that contract is not signed, sealed, delivered, and ready to do work until probably January, February, or March. Even when I had the program, or Kim Hagley had the program, or Zach had the program previously, that was the biggest problem we had, which is why, well, in February, I can say these are your 30 sidewalks you're going to get completed, but they're not going to get completed until next March, April, May, June, July, because the funding didn't become available till July. Once that became available, it went into a contract. That contract's not approved till January, February. And then there's probably $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 worth of work in that contract with 6, 7, 8 boards. Hopefully it's not the problem we talked about earlier, where we only have one contractor doing all the work in the city. Because if it is, then there could be multiple contracts that are all getting released in February, where it could be millions of dollars of work to do. And that's why I've always pushed as much as we could to get other contractors on board. Problem with the other contractors, we've had very bad luck with using we've had good luck with probably 3 different contractors throughout the years. All the other contractors on top of that, we've had pretty major failures. And once they fail, then there's a couple options that the Board of Public Service has. If that contractor fails, it either gets rebid, or that low bidder has to pay the next bidder the difference between bid 1 and bid 2 in order for us to release them or indemnify them of no harm. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to try to be one. But if that contractor does fail, then there's another delay, and you're talking several months. But right now, I think the biggest thing is I mean, Zach's actually got at least 2 inspectors working on this every day, trying to get everybody's list cleaned up. And we started on this, what was it, July 21? There was, I think, 6,500 addresses on the sidewalk program because the previous manager never cleaned any of the data up. I believe I haven't talked to Zach lately, but I believe we're around 2,000 now, just after cleaning up the pure data. Sidewalks have been poured, service requests were still open. We received letters back from properties that said they didn't want to participate, still open. No note of the letter, or there was a note that the letter went out, but there wasn't a note that they returned it and said they didn't want to participate. I mean, there was a whole bunch of just data. That's all it was just bad data. And once that's cleaned up, and I think we've seen it in several wards now, that the money that is there does actually cover most of the work that's needed. There's a few exceptions to that I know of, board-wise, but most of them, it's actually covered what was, or the money that was requested, that was actually the amount needed to complete the work after we sent letters out, once we cleaned up the data, which is great. With that being said, there's a few wards that don't have that luxury, and instead of not needing any money, need lots of money in order to complete the addresses in their ward.
Right, thank you. Yeah, I look forward to getting the 13th ward sidewalks up and running. Yeah, is all of the money for sidewalks that are supposed to be moving forward. I mean, well, if you wouldn't be issuing a contract without having the money for what's in that contract. So does that mean anybody who allocated money through St. Louis Works, any sidewalks that are being paid for into St. Louis Works, those are not moving forward at this time? What's going on there?
That is correct. That budget still has not been approved for St. Louis Works for the last 2 years. The third one will be up here somewhere probably between now and February. So there's essentially 3 years of St. Louis Works that is not in play yet.
How much is that? How much money?
I believe it was 9.5 million.
Excuse me. So we're gonna get into that.
Okay.
So we're doing
I'll
process,
change my line.
and then
of
we're gonna get
questioning.
into that and the whole thing, okay?
Great.
Because let me just tell you, because the director hadn't been doing her job and don't want to talk on the phone. She's a texter and doesn't want to talk on the phone to me. And that's what the part of the problem is. And I just was approached by her finally less than a month ago. We will get into that. Go
Great.
ahead. Anything else?
Great. I appreciate it. We have so much money coming in, but I feel like one of the things that Mr. Flake, I probably should call you Mr. Flake in this kind of official capacity, but was saying was that, there's a pause and the contracts are coming in and then the work happens. And I think ideally we're always in some part of that cycle where work is happening so that we're not having these years-long gaps of no work or minimal work. Because I think one of the things that happens is that the money's there, but if the process isn't moving in the way that it should, and all those cogs aren't working together, then we end up with these moments where it's like the sidewalk program's been broken for 5 years and we weren't aware of it. That really cannot happen. And anytime that I can be helpful or that there's something that needs to be done that I'm not doing, just please tell me, because I never want to be that cog that's not moving the right way. So I appreciate that and all your time. I just want to keep the sidewalk work moving in 13. I have so many people waiting, and I just, they got to move. A guy has to move. So I appreciate all you're doing. Thanks for letting me ask questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Alderwoman Howard is next. Is there anybody else on the committee? Alderwoman Howard.
Yes, I'm sorry. Let me let my dog out. I'm sorry.
Okay, while she's doing that, I can ask you a question, Mr. Flake. So who does your bidding? Is it BPS that bids out your contracts?
That is correct.
Okay. That's why I needed Mr. Bradley. Okay, go. It's Alderwoman
Okay.
Howard.
I won't monopolize a lot of time here. I kind of want an idea, I've been fully funding my sidewalks since I came into office 13 years ago, but I know many of them have not been done. Are we, and maybe this is a question for Zach. How are we catching up? I mean, are we about caught up at all? I know I talked with him about a year ago and he said, it's really difficult. And I just wanted to know, is there a process of how we're approaching each one of these in the wards? Are we trying to work from north to south, south to north, east to west? Is there some rhyme or reason in how we're approaching these?
That's usually the goal for having two contractors, so we can put one on one side of the city, the other on the other side. The problem now is we have two contracts with the same contractor. I do not know if they might be running two crews. I do not know that for certain. That's definitely more of a Zach question. And also where we are in a particular ward is more of a Zach question. But yeah, if you want to send him a short email,
Okay.
he can certainly tell you where we are as far as surveying your ward, as far as where work is, if you have work in one of these two contracts we have out there now, and what can be expected out of that. The other problem currently is is Zach plus two other employees of mine are on grand jury duty.
Oh.
So, and of course, they're all managers. So it's not making life any easier. And they all went down essentially the same time here about 2-3 weeks ago. So they are here about 50% of the time, and with the grand jury, the other 50% of the time. But he's still answering email, and he can at least point you,
Okay.
give you some direction and actually tell you where we actually are.
So I guess when you were talking about 6,500 2 years ago, I guess, do you have any idea, big picture, are we down, into a manageable number, or do you know?
Yeah, I believe we were around 2,000, 2,500, somewhere in there, because like I said, it was all just unkept data. And
Yeah.
we had so many locations that were done. We had other locations that didn't qualify. They were LRA property, they were this, that, or something else.
Okay.
And there wasn't tree damage. It was more a building demo. The sidewalk may or may not got a damage during the building demo, but every other sidewalk in that block is disastrous. So it doesn't make any sense to do that one LRA property in the middle of
Right.
35 other bad sidewalks. But yeah, I
So
think
basically just cleaning up the list and finding out what needs to be done and what's toss off. Yeah, I got it. So, okay, well, keep fighting the good fight. Thank you.
Anybody else on the committee? Anybody that's not on the committee, that's an alderperson that has a question? Okay, I got a couple more. So you talked about the contract. Don't you don't have multiple contracts going on at all time? Is it just at one time of the year that you put a contract out?
we are an oddball, and I'm not sure why we're an oddball. Because BPS has citywide contract, which I think most everybody on here is familiar with. Citywide. It does sidewalk work. If you need columns rebuilt or built, it's been there for quite some time. That's just, I think it's like a 2-year contract. I'm not even exactly sure how it works, but I think it's unlimited funds. Rich Bradley, if he was here, could explain this way better. But I believe it's just a time contract, and anything the city finds during that time, they just hand off the citywide contract. We, on the other hand,
I'm sorry, can you stop again? It's a time contract?
I believe it's based on time. Yeah, I believe it's like a 2-year time limit with no actual money set aside directly for that contract. As alderman, the alderman can fund it. If you need 10 sidewalks poured, you guys will do a transfer with your liaison. That money gets put into place. Once the money's put into place, citywide contractor jumps on it tomorrow.
Well, wait a minute, stop. So people have put from previous years $100,000 or whatever. So why would they have to transfer some more money if they already had? Because I've heard from one alderman said they had a couple $100,000. And Alderwoman Swicer, do you know how much money you had in your account already?
For sidewalks,
Mm-hmm.
there wasn't much when I became an older person, but then I put in 150, and that's what I know is being worked with currently.
Okay. So, but you didn't have, there wasn't any left from the previous alderperson as far as you know.
If there was, it wasn't much, just a few
Okay.
thousand maybe.
Thank you. So, but I've heard it from some other aldermen, if there's money already there, they don't need to transfer more money, would they? I'm talking to Mr. Flake now.
Yeah, please let me finish. There's two different contracts here. I'm talking about BPS's citywide contract is a time contract. Our contracts are different than that. Ours are ran strictly by money. So our contract gets bid out. The assumption is if I have 7 wards with $100,000 apiece, I'll put that out for bid. I estimate the quantities of sidewalk that actually is, and then that's bid out that way. So it's a essentially material labor bid versus and once that money is spent, that 700,000 for those 7 wards, the $100,000 apiece, that contract's over. If the contractor who wins that is done with that work in 2 months, that contract's over unless we do a change order to it. But that contract is over. I don't really understand, and I've never understood why very similar contract between citywide and 50/50 are 2 totally different animals in that respect. That one, I believe, is whatever happens in those 2 years, that work can be done, whether it's $500,000 or $1.5 million, versus ours being strictly, if 700,000 put into the contract, once that 700,000 is spent, it's done and over. And then we have to put another contract out for the next 7 wards at 100,000 at 700,000.
So the first contract you did 7 wards, then the next contract, you would do a different 7 wards or whatever amount of wards. Is that what you're saying? You wouldn't include, let's just say there was some money left over. You wouldn't include doing other sidewalks from one of the wards you've done. You go to a whole different set of wards. Is that right?
If I have funding, I'm going to put it into a contract.
Okay.
So if I got 28 wards that all give me $100,000 a piece, it's a lot of money actually, but
2.8 million.
so,
I
so
got
I'm
there.
gonna put that into 3 or 4 different contracts. If I had all that money sitting here today, that's going out as 3 or 4 different contracts.
Okay, now, just a little bit about the process when you talk about bidding out. In order to do 50/50, the people have to put the money up front. So if you estimate it's gonna cost $10,000, just to use a little amount, they have to put that $10,000 up for their sidewalk. And then the way the process goes is then when the sidewalk is done and you bill the people, then the people pay either one lump sum, and I think they could do 2 or 3 or 4 payments. Some people drag it out longer than that, but then that money is supposed to go back into the alderman's ward account, not to you guys. Isn't that correct?
I believe it goes into a revenue account that is kept at streets.
But it's for, you're making me stutter now. So you said what? It goes into a revenue account for streets, but it's for each individual alderman because that's the money that was paid back. And it's supposed to be 50/50, and it doesn't become 50/50 if I pay $100,000 up, and let's just say then 50,000 comes back because the people paid it. That's my $50,000, not the streets. Isn't that correct?
That's absolutely correct, and it is absolutely how it is kept. We have a
And then-
database. We have
Okay.
a database with every payment that comes in is earmarked with a ward and an address.
And so if I ask for an accounting of my ward of who's paid every year, you should be able to give that to me, right?
That's correct.
Okay, because I couldn't get that from the previous person. And that was one of the things I was waiting for you all to get cleaned up, because the good thing is that I actually keep a list of who I okayed, who I said I was going to pay for and all of that. But sometimes people may not have that, but I don't know why then every year, each alderman, either at the December or January, at some point, we shouldn't get a report. This is where your 50/50 sidewalk money is. Is that something that could be done?
It's absolutely something that can be done. And this, there's 2 things that kind of happen here with the old program manager. Because the same time we had it, because this was provided yearly by Kim Hagley, by myself, every year. The problem is the same time the program manager came in is the same time our accountant at that time retired. So if the old accountant, not the old accountant, the retired accountant was still here, that would have still been being provided. The new accountant didn't know anything about that report. Has been made aware here over the last year that this needs to start being provided. But so yeah, it was kind of, I guess, the perfect storm, for lack of a better term, because the program manager and the accountant both essentially started about the same time, and neither one really knew what had been provided versus what hadn't been provided. So it just became an issue, but yes, it's very easy to provide.
Okay, and then this thing, building demo damage. So when the building department or whoever contractor damages the sidewalk, as I understand it, they're responsible for replacing that sidewalk, not the automatic fund. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so we shouldn't be seeing, and we also don't have to pay for LRA's property. We can if we want to, but that's their responsibility. And if we pay for LRA, we pay for the whole thing because they don't put any 50-50 anything in. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and let's see here. I said one more thing. So who does the sidewalk? Because I'm probably going to get away from 50-50 sidewalk. And probably just pay for all of my constituents' sidewalk. Who does the same contractor do the sidewalks if I don't want to do 50-50? If I just want to pay for the entire thing?
One more time.
Does the same contractor do this, pour the sidewalk, I get the job, if I don't want to do 50-50, if I just say, hey, look, these are my 50 people and I'm paying for their sidewalks?
It should not be. That should, if you're paying 100, if the alderman's paying 100%, and they do not really want that they don't want the letters to be sent out, they don't want all of that. They should be using citywide to cover something 100%.
Okay,
If they want to do 50-50, they should participate in the 50-50.
okay, and citywide is BPS?
Yes.
I knew so I told Mr. Bradley I needed him. He snookered me a little bit. He and I gonna have a conversation. He said, I don't know anything about that. And you're telling me he does know some things about it. That's interesting. Okay. Alderman Page, I see your hand there.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Mr. Flight, I did a sidewalk project to re-pour the sidewalks from Cole Street through O'Fallon along 14th Street. Those sidewalks were in horrible shape for many, many years, and I'm working hard to make my ward safer and more walkable. Once the construction, I worked on BPS with this, and the citywide contractor got the project started. And I went down one Saturday and walked every 50 feet of the old sidewalks, the dugout old sidewalks, and the newly poured concrete. When I got down to the newly poured concrete, which there wasn't much of it at the time I was out there, it was not that much poured at that time, but I was taking photos to share with my constituents on my community Facebook page to let them know, let them see up close and personal their ward capital dollars at work. When I got down to the newly poured sidewalk, I saw something that was referred to earlier. Someone went out there and carved absolutely horrific graffiti into the concrete before it set. I was just heartbroken. It's reality. It's the reality we live in, but I was heartbroken. So I took a separate set of photos of the graffiti, and I got with my BPS liaison, like the next business day, and said, what are we going to do about this? And he sent the citywide contractor back out to repair / re-pour those sections of concrete that were damaged with graffiti. And a lot of it was, as you alluded to, was hate speech. And I just could not leave that there. I don't want my constituents, my seniors, having to walk to the bus stop, walk back and forth, and having to endure that just to get from place to place. I have two questions for you. Number one, when we encounter something like this, and I'm glad I caught it early in the construction process, who pays for repairing / replacing those damaged sections of sidewalk?
It really depends on the contractor, and depends on the damage. So if it's mostly set up and the graffiti's not really deep, it's more just a sketching instead of actually dug in to the concrete. The contractor can actually take, there's a rubbing stone they have, and they can actually just rub that out if it's more of an etch versus dug in. Typically, if it's dug in and it's got to be fully replaced, that's I'm not sure how citywide does it, but historically with 50/50, that's a whole new cost to the alderman.
Wow. Okay. Well, anyway, I whatever the deal is, I cannot leave that in my neighborhood like that. That just won't do. Second question I have for you: is there any process or procedure that the citywide contractor or other concrete pouring or sidewalk pouring contractors can use to protect the sidewalk from these graffiti carvers until the concrete is cured, until it's set up? Is there any way to protect my community from these knuckleheads?
I mean, realistically, I spoke about this a little bit earlier. That's why we went to the exposed aggregate 10 years ago, because what they do is it's essentially just pouring the same concrete that you always pour. They put a chemical on it so the top quarter inch, eighth of an inch doesn't set up, and they come back and pressure wash that later, which makes it essentially almost graffiti proof. Exposed aggregate sidewalk doesn't always make sense though. You might be in a neighborhood that every other sidewalk is the bright white picture frames floral sidewalk, but then exposed next to that doesn't make sense. But like I said earlier, 10 years ago, to me, it was a no-brainer to go with the exposed. Most residential communities, it makes more sense. When you start getting into more commercial neighborhoods, it's usually more just the regular PCC white concrete, just Portland concrete, cement concrete. But in general, and especially in the residential areas, it just made sense to go to exposed.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you, Madam Chair. I yield back on the subject of sidewalks.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who has questions of these gentlemen? Because now we're going to get into the monetary funding. And because BPS has been brought into this, BPS will be back here next week then to answer questions. So about the whole process of bidding out contracts and how does that work? But since he's not here now, we're going to move on. I now want to get a report of what has been going on first with the 50/50 sidewalk. When I last spoke with you gentlemen, you didn't have, the person who was ultimately terminated had disappeared and wouldn't come back to work. And so you said you needed time to try to figure out what was going on. So I stayed away from that, left it alone. But I never heard back from anybody about what was going on. As the chair of streets, I guess I expected that once you had some kind of handle on this, that somebody was going to get back with me and say, look, this is what's going on. I did check once or twice. You hadn't really gotten it together. And this was before Mr. Fortune, I guess, got here. And so have you grasp on what has been happening under the former person and where people's money is? Do we have some kind of chart or Excel file or something that charts where the money is? And I need that report. And can you tell me what happened and give me a report on what you were able to find out?
So comptroller's internal audit section did a audit on essentially the 50/50 sidewalk program. Same time that we were trying to get a grasp on what was actually happening also internally. That report is on internal audit's website, and it's listed as spatial review 2022 SP01-5050 sidewalk program. And the date on that is, because you need the date in order to find the reports on their website, is 6/22/2022.
Okay, 6/22/22.
Yes.
All right.
That review did find a few issues, but essentially most of the issues were management issues, not money issues. If you look through it real quick, I can give you a quick summary of what they were. And it also has our management responses to their findings also. Their number one item, which I think was more, well, the number one item was the program has experienced a significant decline in program participation. What that was based on, I believe, and this is in my response, was the previous manager was not sending out letters to all wanting to be participants with estimates.
Can I stop you for a minute? And I
Yep.
can read the comptroller's thing.
Okay.
Okay, I want to know what you or Mr. Wilson found out. And also, you were that employee's immediate supervisor, that's correct?
That is correct.
So the issues, I guess and I was waiting for you to get back to me because I didn't understand. And I'm not gonna stand right over you. But if you're my employee at the end of the year or every 6 months or something, you're gonna give me some kind of report of what's going on. So I was just a little stunned when you said, we don't have these records, we don't have anything, because you didn't have a process in which he had to tell you what was going on.
He provided the reports of what sidewalks were being completed. He provided the automatic list early in the year of what sidewalks he was asking for funding for. It was never realized that those were incomplete lists that he was providing. So if you had 100 CSB service requests for sidewalk repairs in your ward, kind of mentioned earlier, and let's say you only funded 50 of them last year, which left 50 more on the table, it was never realized that next year he was not asking for funding for those 50 that were not funded the previous year. And that is the biggest place all of this went south at. And we've always have worked oldest to newest. So it didn't make, once we figured this out, it didn't make any sense why he took it upon himself to essentially work newest to oldest. Actually, not even newest to oldest, just newest to newest, and forget about all the old stuff.
So what I'm asking is, so there was no process in place to catch that. Have you rectified that? Now, if somebody, if Zach Fortune would try to do that, is there something in place where you would know? Because the reason why I knew, because when I got on him, after I had waited 7, 8 years, is I keep a list every year, who I turned in, what's going on, what they give me. But that's because, again, when I first was a new alderperson, they charged me for somebody else. And so that put me on alert right then. You better keep up with this, okay? But since we have Excel files and all kind of files, I don't understand why there wasn't something being submitted to you, and then maybe you to Mr. Wilson saying, this is what's going on. And I guess that if you felt like it's never been a problem before, maybe you don't put that in place. But those are the kind of things to me that you put in place. Because when I got back here, Forestry was having a problem with some employees that went to jail about $400,000. And you have a lot of money going through there. So you cannot, don't trust Sharon Tyus and nobody else. Trust everybody and brand all your cows, okay? So for me, him being able to do that and you guys not knowing about it was somewhat of a failure on your part, okay? And I'm hoping that you put something in place so that if I came to work for you, that wouldn't happen again.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And now there's multiple people watching. I mean, this kind of once again goes back to the data. He was taking the steps, he was providing the information, but until you dive in deep into the information, deep into the data, you
Hold on just a moment. Mr. Wilson, you don't have to put up your hand. You're part of the testimony. So if you have something to say after Ken is finished, you could just speak too. Okay, go ahead.
But yeah, until you did the deep dive into the actual service request, and we were looking at 6,500 of them, or 68 or whatever it was, once we figured this out in July of 2021, it was the same reports, the same everything that had always been provided. But if you didn't do a deep dive into the service request, first of all, you didn't realize there was 6,500 of them. And the other issue, which I've worked with ITSA, is that our search is limited to 2,000 records. So when you have 6,000 and I do a search for all my sidewalk requests, it just says max 2,000, can't give you any more. I can break that down per ward. So then, well, just using a random number, then I get 6,500 divided by 28. So each one of those reports is very easily to run, very easy to view. We do that now. Like I said, it was never expected. I would have never guessed to have seen this, that we'd always worked oldest to newest, and for somebody to just forget about the old stuff. And I'm only concerned about the sidewalks that came in 2022, and I have 200 sidewalks from 2019 to 2021. I would have never thought somebody would have ever done that. And like I said, when Zach and I were going through the information, it was like, oh my gosh, this is what he was doing. And yes, that's on us. We should have figured it out at least a couple years before. But I think I've mentioned it to you and a couple other aldermen that most of the conversations between the alderman and the program manager at the time were never elevated or escalated to my attention. So I thought, other than things were slow, I thought everything was fairly copacetic.
Mr. Wilson, you had something to say?
A little more basically what Kent was saying. I think we had the benefit or even luxury of some good project program managers, being Kim Hagley and Kent and Zach for some time. And then the one we're talking about here, who abandoned his job, was providing Kent enough information and the alderman enough information, let it know they were active, alive. It was continuing yet slow, like Kent says, without having a need to deconstruct the whole job to see if it was done correctly from Kent's perspective. And I will personally say, if there's anybody that works for the city that would deconstruct something from the ground up, if there was a need, it would be Kent. Man works 7 days a week, so he clearly has the time to do it and does it for a lot of things. So if he saw a need, he would have dug in. So this wasn't an unintelligent person we were dealing with in this program manager before. There was an art to what was being done there that let us know that, or let us think he was doing his job without complaints enough to drive your supervisor to have to deconstruct it all. And I think Ken's saying his point is we're learning that old expression, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. Now, because of a bad apple, we are going to have these steps that you're going to have to provide more information so we know the program manager is doing their job correctly into the correct scope of what their duties are.
Okay, so I guess what I envisioned that happened, and so I go back to Wally Hose, okay, so go back before all this, is I envisioned that that the 50/50 sidewalk program manager would then come to you, Mr. Flake, and at the end of the year or every 6 months, this is what's come in, these are the amount of people who have requested, this is what we've gotten done, and mostly I think at the end of the year. So you would have a paper report, if you needed to go back into it, that says, okay, and then the next year, this is what carried over. That's what I did with my own thing. And I know it's just my ward, but you should have required that from him is what I'm saying, because, and it didn't even have to be paper. It could have been digital, which would have then put you on alarm, because you should not have to be going back and looking for 6,000 things, okay? And so I guess I want to know, what have you all done now so that doesn't happen? How are we approving this program? Because we can't go back and bring him back and make him pay for what he did, but what have you done now to improve the program so that doesn't happen anymore?
I'm gonna step back real quick on this. The same thing this employee did to us, or did to me, he was doing to all of you. You know, would provide you a list of 40 addresses. This is what came in. This is all you need to fund. And that's what you funded.
No, it wasn't, because that's how I made him do mine. Because when he did that to me, I said, oh, no, you didn't. Let me tell you. And I went back for 13, you know what, when I came back in 13, I went back to my list from 13 and also pulled up all my emails to him and said, this is what I sent you, which is why he did mine finally, okay? And that's what I'm saying. I kept a trail. So I guess I was imagining that's what you all were doing also on a bigger scale. I know it was more than me, but that's why I like the wards. Okay, this is ward 1, 2, 3 to 28 accounts, and I'm tracking this. And since the addresses are by ward, the same tracking system that I was doing should have been done on a large scale account. That's what I'm saying, okay? And again, it just wasn't. And so now I'm not gonna beat that to death. I wanna know what we are doing so that that doesn't happen again.
So we hired a new program manager, obviously. That manager has at least 2 employees working for him at all times, both monitoring the estimation side and the contractor side, make sure everything is agreeable there. Zach now has reports, his trailer, I guess, not his office, but his trailer is right next to mine. He has those reports with the number of addresses that are on the list per ward, number of addresses that have been funded per ward, number of addresses that have been completed per ward. He has all that on his wall. He's provided me copies a couple times as he's taken over the program. Not upon request, just stating to me that this is where we are, which Zach and I have worked very closely for pretty much my entire tenure here, 22 years. And he's been here, I think, 19. So we've worked very closely for all of those years. He's a data guy. I'm a data guy. And we're going to have reports, as I mentioned earlier, with revenue, or the citizens' payments coming in. We will have that. We'll know exactly where the dollars are. The biggest, or one of the other issues with this is it would have been nice to have happened and have had this money out on the street a year and a half, 2 years ago, to actually have the work done, because concrete has went through the roof, which several of you probably have had this discussion with Zach already, that last year our contracts were $8 a square foot. Now we're $13, $14 a square foot. So
With 13 to 14, did you say?
I think it's 13 or 14 currently.
Okay.
And I think a year, 18 months. Yeah, a year
So
and
that's
18
cost
months
us
ago.
money then, for us to be behind like that. That's costing the older people money. Okay.
Yes. Depending on, I'm not sure when last two contracts, I'm not sure when the money came in to fund those. I don't know if we're talking capital 2022 or capital 2023. I would assume capital 2022. I'm not sure where the concrete price was then. Let's say July of 2021. Because if that money would have hit contracts then, it could have been the same thing. It could have been a massive jump. But I know, and I'm not exactly sure when our prior two contracts or three contracts went out. Pretty easy to find out, but I don't think anybody expected almost what 65-70% jump in concrete cost essentially year over year.
Okay, so the aldermen have to eat that cost because of an employee in your department that didn't do his job, okay? Now, you may have answered this question. What is the time frame now we're getting things done? Because we're catching up. What's the time frame?
I'm gonna have to check with Zach on that. I know he's getting work out. And I think at this point, it's not necessarily fair to say what the time frame is because some of these requests are from 2018.
But I'm saying now that we got, so do you feel that we have the 50-50 sidewalk straightened up and so that it's accountable now? And if Zach left tomorrow, you could go in there and know what was going on.
I don't think he's fully caught up and cleaning up wards yet. Which I think he's close. Me and him have not had a chance to talk about this directly on where he is on cleaning up all the wards. But I believe once the wards are cleaned up, actually one of the inspectors that's currently working for him could probably take it over next week and we'd probably be just fine.
Okay, but not just inspector, could you as his boss, could you go in and are they giving you reports so that you would know what's going on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but I don't know exactly which wards have been cleaned up and which ones have not.
And so have they given reports to the alder people as they cleaned them up of, hey, I've done wards 5, 7, 8 or whatever? Do they get reports now saying we know what's going on with you so that they can then ask questions if they don't agree?
Yes, Zach's been either meeting or talking with each and every alderman as those lists have been cleaned up and numbers are starting to make more sense.
Okay, and so since Zach isn't here, I guess he'll be back. I'll ask him to come next week with BPS because I still need to get a little bit more detailed about the time frame when we're gonna catch up because we're soon running out. And then how do you anticipate, this is just a question, what happens because we go to 14, not 28? How do you then, I know, I still think that's crazy. All these people think that's so great. They're going to find out that's not great at all. Okay. But that's what we're doing anyway. I am still adamantly opposed to this, just like I was with Proposition D. And then now we spent $200,000 to $300,000 on an election in September, which I am on record saying this is poorly written. All you people who are out there for it, you don't know how to write stuff. So the city wasted, but none of those people are now saying you were right, Alderwoman Tyus, and we were wrong. They just take these positions and then act like there's no consequence. You wasted hundreds of $1,000s of people's money, taxpayers' money. All of them should be saying, mea culpa, I didn't know what I was doing. That's why you have senior people who've been around for a long time who, what did they tell me? I'd lecture them. I lecture them because they don't know what they're talking about. Okay. And I've paid my lumps. I've come through the ranks. I got cheated and came back and come through the ranks, but I do know how to write legislation. And that was poor legislation. And therefore we had a September election that if somebody got 10 million votes and somebody got 1, you still have to have another election. That's a waste of taxpayers' dollars. And when this thing goes to the 14 wards, they only believe things if they actually see it. They do not believe experience of what has happened. And I just got to say this, when I was new, I was just like them. Thought I knew every daggum thing. And Joanne Wayne was here, and Nancy Weber and Mary Ross. And one time when I was new, and we had 6 people in our class, and we knew so much, Jack Garvey, myself, all of us, and we thought we were doing something, and Joanne Wayne let us just bump our heads. And we were so mad, and we went to her and said, why did you let us do this? You could have told us. And she said, you came down here knowing every damn thing. So now you know. That is always, to this day, I carry that around. I got something that says you came down here knowing every damn thing, because you don't. And even if you disagree with seniority and people who are been around for a long time, it really does behoove you to listen sometimes, okay? And then just when you mess up, to come and say, hey, I didn't know all of that. Now, maybe I might learn something if I don't challenge so much thinking that I know stuff. So I know this is going to be hard already, okay? It's going to be hard on a lot of things. How do you, and the reason why I'm asking this, because at least half of us or more will not be back here. How will you do the accounting for the wards with people who are gone? And that's why what I'm looking for is at the end of the year, even sometime before the end of the year or January, I think, you know, every department is supposed to do reports anyway. They don't do it because the last couple of mayors didn't know that you're supposed to, but the charter actually requires every department to give a report to the mayor's office and to the board of aldermen. We haven't gotten them, I don't think, since I got down here, except for a few exceptions. Are you anticipating giving us some kind of a report so that the wards that were put together maybe could work together? Let's just say in my ward, mostly I got my same ward, but there's parts of the 4th ward, all the 4th ward, but then parts of the 2nd ward and a little bit of the 21st ward. Will you give us reports so that we can sit down and make sure that there is a fair transition of money? Do you have that capability at this time?
We should be able to have that capability. What I would say, and this is just my own opinion at this moment, would be that any money that we have any ward. So let's say Alderman the 13th gives us $100,000 postmarked for Ward 13. My opinion would be to have that in a contract for Ward 13. That work to be done in today's Ward 13, and with that to proceed that way. And the same thing for anyone else that would have money with streets as of or before the ward change, for that work to be completed in that ward. And I think my goal, at least on, I have no idea how this works on the paving side, but at least with money that can be placed into contracts, that work be completed in today's existing ward, because that's who placed the money there, and it's where that work should be completed at.
Okay.
As far as if there was money still left there, that's going to be really confusing. So I'd really like to not have that money not in contract. Like I said, paving wise, we have some aldermen, not to jump into paving, but we have some aldermen that will put 100,000 in the streets account and for various locations that they'll determine later. When we go from 28 to 14, I don't know what happens with that.
We're going to have to figure it out before we actually do it. I'm just telling you, I want to make sure that people feel that it's done fairly and equally and equitably. Okay, I have some money back from the old 20th ward. I finally just found the money. I knew I had it. I got $1 million that everybody floated around, but I keep my stuff. I just have to keep digging. So I found it. I got a new $1 million that's sitting there, and everybody kept saying, oh, I don't know anything about it. I was like, but I'm going to find it. So I did find it yesterday, actually. So and since I have all of my old ward back, that'll be fair to spend that money. But I don't want people who leave here not at least being able to sit down and kind of put some instructions about what they want done with the money. Even after we have the first election, then we got to have a second election. And what's so hard, there's hardly any time. They don't even understand. When you have that second election, it used to be I had the first election and then I could go back to work. Now I got to have a second election. And then you only have like a week or so and you're back at work again, starting a new section, the new session. So that's really hard on the Board of Election and a lot of other people, but we're going to have to try to find a way to do it because we do want to be fair and equitable to everybody, even if the people don't realize how hard this is going to be on you guys. So I'm just kind of giving you a heads up that we will be looking for this, and it's going to, you have money. So that's going to be important that everybody feels like that their money went to the correct person. If one ward went into a whole nother ward, then that's pretty easy. But if you divide your ward up, if your ward has been divided up to 3 or 4 other wards, that's going to be a hard thing about how you do that. And I think those aldermen need to be making those decisions now, so that, and looking at the map and saying, hey, we want this divided up. My ward went into 4 wards, so I want to divide it up into 4 different wards and go into the new wards or something like that. So I'm hoping you can work with us. I know you usually meet with us in March, April, but I'm hoping that maybe, and I know it'll be in the middle of campaign season, but February or March or something, we might need to be meeting to talk about what we do with this money. Okay.
Absolutely. Plus it's budget season too. Yay.
I know. Okay. So just a little recap. We don't find any money missing. We find management problems, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And you, so you have changed it. I would like to, if anything you have, you can send to me. I'd like for you to send me what you've been doing in writing, and I'll share it with the committee, what we've done to make sure that doesn't happen again. We will pull the comptroller's report off of the internet, and I'll ask the clerk to share it with everybody. And your responses are on that. That is correct?
That's correct. It is missing an attachment though. I will send you guys that attachment.
Okay. Okay. Is there anything now in the comptroller's report that you want to address to us personally? I just didn't want you to go through the whole thing, but there's something that you feel is not fair or it's not fully explained. This is your time to do that.
My responses cover everything. The only thing it doesn't cover is the spreadsheet that was supposed to be attached, but says in my response that it's attached, that was not attached. So I will provide that to the committee.
Okay. Does anybody have anything more on the 50/50 sidewalk fund? Anybody have any questions about that? Okay, so ward capital fund. Oh, I'm sorry, Alderwoman Davis. Alderwoman Davis, I see your hand is up.
I'm unmuted now.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I
No
got a whole
problem.
bunch of things going on here with the system today. So I just wanted to reiterate, and first let me thank you for this, because many of us, once we do the allocations, we never go back and look to see who's actually been served. And I really don't understand how people's names get removed from a list, because technically they are the process in auditing. You're supposed to make sure that each one of those individuals gets served. So somehow in your new process, we need to make sure people's names are not removed and that their names stay attached to the allocation, irregardless to who the alderperson is, because that money is city money that is being provided to assist the constituency. So how it got moved and lost is a little interesting, but I appreciate the fact that we are looking at this, because now I got to go sit down and look at all my stuff And most especially that whole bidding process is what bothers me. And everybody knows that because there are capable people out here, and I demand that we use them so that my stuff can move forward and not sit there and wait. But again, I just wanted to say thank you. I appreciate the departments working with me. Ken, Jamie, all of you all know that I'm persistent, but I'm not mean. I just want my folks served. That's all. But I wanted to thank you again. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Alderwoman Boyd.
Thank you. I think maybe I'm just kind of weird, but I was one of the ones that actually wrote my ward for the addresses that was given that said they were getting a 50-50. And that's how I found out. And I told TJ I had stopped some sidewalks from being put in because they were vacant lots and LRA properties. And so I think the best thing you all did, Ken and Jamie, was bring Zach back. Zach for streets is like the Randy for refuge. And so Zach is thorough. Zach will make it happen. He follows up. He doesn't cut us short. He makes sure that we're knowledgeable on what's going on. And I did sit down with him and we did meet and we went over those sidewalks. So I just wanted to say thank you all because that was a piece missing in your dynamics of the street department, and Zach is one of the good ones. So thank you. But that's why I said I'm just a little strange because I just rolled through and saw what was listed and what was happening. And when TJ was there, I did challenge him and told him I wasn't paying for some sidewalks. I said, I told you, I'm not paying for that, a vacant lot in a LRA property. I'm not doing that. So I appreciate that you are trying to address this 50-50 thing because it was a mess. It was like a zoo to me. I was like, oh my God. So thank you all very much for continuously trying to improve it and make sure that we do it. I'm just nervous because of, as Alderwoman Taya said, we're going into the new session and we're gonna wind up with new alder people. And so people need to try to make sure that they're getting as much utilized in their prospective wards. So when the new alder people come, you know, they won't have to worry about that because that'll be done. But I'm just nervous now. And I saw Kent put his head down and put his hand on his head when we said it going to 14. I feel for you, Kent, because I don't know how that's going to work. So thank you all very much.
I do want to bring up something. So I had a problem in my ward because I had people calling me saying, hey, I haven't gotten a bill about the sidewalk they poured. Did we finally ever get out bills or should I just talk to Zach and find out? Because I mean, they were calling me up to maybe 5 or 6 months ago about not getting a bill about sidewalk that was poured maybe a year and a half ago. Are we still billing people or have we caught up with that process?
We are catching up on that process as we speak. I know everything that has been poured on these two contracts has had an estimate letter sent and bills have been sent once completed. A year and a half, 2-year window in there. We're still trying to figure that part out.
Well, what I'll do is I'll just send him over my list of people that should have been poured. I ended up said I was going to pay you 100% for some because it was so messed up. I just couldn't even go back to those people and say anything. So I have 2 lists, but I need to know what's going on because every time when they call me, I'm embarrassed to talk to them because they're calling me. They want to do. They're like, hey, we got good sidewalk. We want to pay. And I don't really want to tell them, but the city just don't have their stuff together. Okay, so that's kind of embarrassing. But I'm thankful that I have people who feel like, hey, I got this. I said I was going to pay for it. Get me that bill. So I'll check with Zach. Is there anybody else that has anything more about 50-50 sidewalk? Because now we're going to go to Ward Capital Fund. No one else. Okay, so Ward Capital Fund, is this where I need Rich Bradley to be here? Is that what you're gonna tell me?
I'm not sure what the question is yet, so.
Okay, so we get this money. And usually I deal with my ward capital funds with the person who is my liaison to BPS. When would you ever come into dealing with ward capital funds? If I needed curbs, or if I wanted to do 50-50 sidewalk, when does the street department enter into using ward capital funds?
Many different ways. So essentially all that money starts off being in your 900 account or your liaison or your BPS account, whatever you'd like to call it. That's why we have our meetings depends on what year it is. With COVID, they moved way back somewhere between February and July. And then we sit down and have our capital meetings. Board of Public Service is the one that states, I'm sure based on somebody else's number, that you're getting $300,000 each ward. From there, if you choose just to do citywide, that stays in the 900 account. If you decide not to do anything with that money at all, it stays in that 900 or the ward's 900 account, which is the BPS account. As soon as you decide to take any dollar amount out of that and put it into 50-50 sidewalk program, street paving, LED upgrades, anything that would have to do with the traffic division. I know dumpsters are a sore subject, but dumpsters. Who else do we have in that room? Well, it's not us directly, but if you put money into the forestry account to plant trees, then forestry becomes involved. So any money at that point that's decided to go to, let's say, a street department account, because that's the question. So whether it be trash dumpsters, paving, 50-50, traffic lighting, then that's when we as commissioners, whether it be myself, Jamie, Randy, etc., become involved.
Okay, so only when it's taken out of the 900 count, then it's moved to the streets account. And are there different account numbers that it goes into, or does it go into one account number?
I'm glad you brought that back up because you mentioned this earlier. And you were close, but backwards. So capital reward money goes into its own individual account. So if Ward 1, 2, and 3 give me $10,000 for paving, that goes into, if it's Ward capital money, that goes at $10,000 goes into Ward 1's account. The second $10,000 goes into Ward 2's account. The third $10,000 goes into Ward 3's account. St. Louis Works is different. It goes into one pot of money, divided by division. So if 28 wards decide between all of them, they're going to take $1 million and put it into paving. So then that gets deposited into a street division St. Louis Works account. But it's all in there and it's not earmarked at all. We have to keep a separate spreadsheet for that, which we do. But it's a lot uglier. This was actually mentioned during the spatial audit we had over the 50-50 sidewalk program. I would love, and I've said this for at least 14 years, that should be separated. So there should be, if Board 1's going to put $10,000 of St. Louis Works into paving, it needs to go to a street division paving account, St. Louis Works, Ward 1.
Who puts it in one big account?
The budget itself goes in that way. It's been requested because the capital accounts have demarcations of Ward 1, 2, 3, through 28. The St. Louis Works account, they have never added that demarcation of Ward 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 through 28. If they existed, we would use them. As far as I know through the comptroller, they do not exist, and therefore they cannot be used.
What do you mean oh, because there's no account?
That's correct.
Okay, so why couldn't we just have a paper account so that we could do for accounting?
That's what we do. But when audited, it looks a lot better if it's all electronically done, and I can pull up Ward 1, boom, this is what I got, versus a piece of paper that may or may not be right.
I agree.
Claim it's right, but it might not be right.
But I will say again, in 2003, and I'm going to share with you guys, I have a copy that they sent back showing where we all had all this interest because they had our stuff separated. So from the time I left, I came back, something happened. And I want to know what happens because that's scary to me. Okay.
Is that CAP or St. Louis Works?
I got to look to see which one now. Okay. But all of them should be separated. You got this money, it should be separated. It shouldn't be incumbent upon you to have to separate it. So I don't understand. I think I was told something about interest rates weren't that great, or they was charging a fee to have that many accounts open. I just can't believe that the city, with all our money that we have, that we can't find a bank that will accommodate us on something like this. Okay. So I'll have conversations with the treasurer and the comptroller and the budget director, because that doesn't make sense to me. And maybe they have a better explanation. But the last time I asked, I think it was that we were getting charged a fee. And I just couldn't believe that we couldn't find somebody that would not charge us a fee for that. Because 28 is not like 150 or 200 or 5,000 or something. So, okay. So, so if this money goes into a paving account, then you keep a separate thing and says, okay, Sharon Tyus is paving Union from Martin Luther King to West Florissant. And then somebody else is picking up Union from Martin Luther King to Page. So you would know whose account took credit for how much of what you were paving.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so, and you said you've never had it separated that you can remember?
Capital's always been separated, or the ward capital's always been separated. St. Louis Works has never been separated.
Okay. All right. And I got to pull which, because we passed in 93, in November of 93 is when the bill got passed, and we started collecting money in 94 so that we could get the, what is it, ward capital money, or is it the work? So I always get them mixed up. Which one is it that we started getting in 94 and it was a bigger amount?
I would assume it's a little before my time. I would assume that was St. Louis Works, so that's
right.
Your nascent utility.
Right,
Yeah.
that's okay, because we passed the St. Louis Works, okay, and we passed that in November, and we collected and had our first money in 1994, not 2094. And you, again, let me just make sure I understand. St. Louis Works is one pot of money.
It's divided between divisions, but so whether it be street division, traffic division, refuse division, but it is one pot of money within that division.
And that's the one that we put in there. I think when I pulled the ordinance, it's going to say that it had to be separated. So I don't know if somebody decided that separation was just paper trail, but not actual physically. But you're saying that for auditing purposes, it needs to be physical also. Is that what I'm hearing?
I would love for it to be that way.
Okay. Okay. And so you, the other one from the 13th brought up about why we hadn't had board bills for the last couple of years. I want to address it because I hadn't heard anything until about, I don't know, I have to look up when it was. I started getting some from Kevin Bailey about introducing a bill. And at this point, the person's not here, so I don't like to talk behind people's back. I never heard from the director until maybe 3 months ago. And then she asked about, we were wondering if you would introduce, and I sent her back an email saying, who are we? Are we the Queens Royal we? And why won't you return my phone calls? And why don't you call me? I got maybe 2 weeks ago, finally, after I had she and Nancy Cross here, then she's finally, she texted me and said, oh, I called you and your voicemail was full. She and I'm not talking about her back, you can go look at when she was here. I said to her, you remind me of my niece who, when I call her, will not answer the phone and then texts me right back. There's a generation who maybe doesn't like to talk to the phone, but when you're going to be the director of streets, if you want me to sponsor something, you have to have a conversation with me. You can't just text me and say, this is what I need you to do, I have somebody else. You're going to have a conversation with me. And that's going to be uncomfortable if you haven't returned my phone calls, because I'm not that person that's going to let you get away with that, okay? And so anybody who doesn't like it shouldn't be the director of streets. That's what I'll say to her. I'll say it to Nancy. I'll say it to the mayor. You don't want to talk? I'm good. But if you want me to sponsor something and come through this committee, I'm going to ask questions just like I'm doing with you all. Sometimes those are uncomfortable questions. Sometimes you make mistakes and then you say, I made a mistake. You know, I said to you all, I thought that there should be a better way that you've been keeping up. That's not unreasonable, but you took that. Okay, that's what I expect for people. The Board of Aldermen, while we have a streets committee, is because we're the oversight for that. Okay, that's why we have it. And we are the same thing as Congress. We can send subpoenas. We can hold you in contempt of the Board of Aldermen. We can put you in jail. People don't know that. All of that is available. So anybody who wants me to sponsor anything and who thinks they're going to do a publicity thing about Sharon Tyus is holding up our money, they might want to go look at when Elliot Davis did that thing a couple of years ago, because the former president, former alderman, told him that I was holding up COVID money, and then he had to do a retraction over and over and over. I always cover myself and tell it, okay? I'm not holding up anything, but as Miss Williams doesn't want to talk to me, she doesn't want it sponsored. And that's where it is, Miss Alderwoman from the 13th Ward. She cannot not talk to me. In fact, I sent her back a response saying, sure, call me up, let's have a talk. But part of that talk will be, why don't you return people's phone calls? And it's not just me. When she was sitting there saying and testifying that she tries to, and she was sorry if she didn't, people from all specters of life were saying she does not return my call. And I'm talking about people who work for the administration saying that's not true. I know it not to be true because she hasn't returned mine. And I don't appreciate it. And then I listened to her, and I was hoping that Nancy Cross would say something, say that when people call her and then they leave something for her, that she turns it over to somebody else. She never said she comes back and checks. So this is my expectation from all of you all. If I ask you something, I expect you to get back with me, even if you turned it over to somebody else and say, well, Alderwoman, you called me. I always had that relationship with the streets department from the people who work for Mr. Suleman. And people got back with me. When you don't talk to me, you don't want to have a conversation with me, you don't want to be challenged, then you don't want me to sponsor any such bill. And anybody who thinks that I'm going to do that is sadly mistaken. No, it cannot come from the lobbyists. It cannot come from the royal we. It comes from the director of streets who sits down. And I was the vice chair of streets for a long time under Alderman Bosley. And before that, I was on streets, I told you, since 91. And I never had, up until this administration, people not want to talk and have a conversation, okay? And if you don't like it, it's a hard job. I don't like when people call and scream at me about the trash not being picked up, because that's the mayor's job, but I take it. And we have conversations. So the reason why the bill has not been sponsored in 2 years is because I just got approached by it. And only a couple of weeks ago, that she finally ordained to return my calls that I've been making. And so I would suggest, if she's listening to this, call me again and we can have a conversation and then we can move this forward. You can't sit up there and think you're going to hide and you guys are going to play a game, because I'm not playing that game. I don't play it with anybody. I'm pretty fair with people. I ask fair questions. If you don't do your job, then we can't work together. If you don't know what your job, and I don't blame this all on her. I blame this on the director of operations, because she doesn't know her job. And then she put somebody in it that was very new. And so a lot of stuff doesn't get done, and the aldermen take the heat because she is a union person. So don't bring to me about why things didn't get done, because I said, of course, I'll introduce that bill. Give me a call and talk to me. So if you don't want to talk to me, you don't want the bill introduced. And I will then put out, they didn't want the bill introduced. I don't know why. I don't know why any director would think they don't have to talk to the person at the Board of Aldermen. The chairman of HUDs, they get to talk to the people over at SLDC. The chairman of Parks, the chairman of Ways and Means, there are a whole bunch of things that you have to have conversations. And if you don't want to have the conversation, then that's when you leave the job. Now, Alderwoman, you have any more questions about why the board bill hadn't been introduced? And I'm talking to Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Do I have any more questions about why the board bill hasn't been introduced?
Right.
No, I would love to see it introduced.
Me too.
So that's, I guess, my only question is,
I'm
when
just
is it being
telling you,
introduced?
I only got approached a few, and I was sick, but Kevin kept sending me stuff, and I told him, Kevin Bailey, you can't talk to me about this. This is something me and the director need to have a conversation. It is not something the lobbyist from the mayor's office is going to do. I need to find out what is going on. I still had not talked to Mr. Flake or Mr. Wilson to find out about all of this stuff. You don't just act like that doesn't exist. This exists. And a lot of you aldermen were getting on my case about it, but I was giving them room because it is hard to go behind somebody. Even if you should have had something in place, if you didn't, that is hard to reconstruct stuff. Okay. And so I'm giving them room, call myself, not really calling them out. And then I get this letter from Nancy Cross saying I'm holding up something. Ridiculous. I want my money yesterday. Okay. So that's why it hasn't been. I will put, she wants to call me, we will talk. And I would suggest that you call other people back, because that's what I'm getting all over the city, is that she's not returning people's call. So that's what's going on. Anybody else have any question about that?
I don't have a question as much as I agree that communication is something we could all improve. I certainly, one of those things.
So here's what I'm gonna say. And I get on Kit because, and the former chair of streets used to say, it's hard to get Kit. I need you to return my calls too. Jamie, you always return my calls, okay? I need my calls returned. I don't call because I just wanna have a conversation about when we're gonna have lunch. I really do need to do business. And so I need my calls returned, okay? And in a time fashion, or if you can't, a text saying, hey, I'm busy, but I'll get back with you. Everything is not a text or email. Some of it needs to be personal contact. That's what I'm gonna say, okay? We went through ward capital funds. We talked about how it gets there. I didn't really have any real hard questions about that, except for just the bills getting introduced. Street paving, can you give me an update? I actually have $7.6 million that we transferred from, not just ARPA funds. That was something that Alderman Oldenburg had, and we transferred it. And we have money to pave streets in North St. Louis. And I didn't see any of that getting done. And can you kind of fill me in about what's going on with street paving?
We talking about like Goodfellow, Union, Kings
Yes.
Highway? Okay.
Yes.
So anytime you pave a street, and this is, I won't say convoluted, it's probably not the right word, but I'm gonna start there. Anytime you pave a street, the wheelchair ramps, they have to be upgraded in order, it's ADA legislation that if I pave a street, the wheelchair ramps have to be upgraded. Also, with that being said, not to throw Bradley under the bus again, but there are multiple traffic studies on these corridors with proposed traffic calming. I believe there's also some curb replacement also on some of these routes, or at least maybe island median curb replacement on some of these routes. So we are not paving until we figure out if wheelchair ramps have to be replaced, if curb has to be replaced. Because on any construction job, the last thing you want to do is pave. It's possible, it's been done before, where we've came in and paved streets and then the wheelchair ramps were done afterwards, and the product's not horrible, but it's better to do all the concrete excavation, et cetera, work prior to paving. Those that did sit in capital meetings this year, back in June or May or whatever it was, I pretty much told everybody I didn't want to do any paving residential wise for you, because I expected to be out paving these either ARPA or large cap projects all this year. So I did not think I was going to have time to go do a residential street, knowing that we were going to be stuck on.
Not stuck. We're going to be doing the pleasure of serving our citizens and giving them so that they have nice paved street. I know you didn't mean to say that, okay?
I did not think we were going to be able to get off the major streets this year, which is
Okay.
why most everybody who I sat with, I told, we can, if you have something that's a really high priority, let me know. We'll do what we can to take care of it. But then as we step back, it's like, wait a second, I cannot go pave Kings Highway tomorrow if we're replacing wheelchair ramps, curb, irrigation systems, whatever it might happen to be, on those thoroughfares.
And that's through
So,
BPS.
yes, and I know they have, I think they have two things going at BPS. Rich can obviously talk about this better than I can. I believe there is a wheelchair ramp study being completed on all of these, and I also believe there's a traffic calming / Jamie might actually be able to say a little more about this than I can, but I know there's existing traffic plans, traffic studies for these roadways, and trying to get those all combined where they actually make sense. So if your ward and your neighbor's ward both had traffic studies, but they might have been done by a different person or different consultant, how do we combine those and make things actually work? And can we afford to include all of that into these projects while we're doing it?
Okay.
Just doesn't make sense to go pave and then come back tomorrow and go, oh, but we wanted to put a median here and we wanted to put a bump out there and a bike lane over here and something else over there. So like I said, cart for the horse, and I'm kind of the cart in this respect.
So I'm married to a city planner, so I get that. What I need from you guys is to let us know every 5 months, 6 months, whatever, say, hey, I need to talk to Streets Committee. Let me give you a report of what's going on so that we're not just walking around like this and or having to call you. If you come and tell the Streets Committee, that's what we're here for, okay? So I would say you have an open door. I have an open door policy. If you guys need to talk to us about something, do that, please, okay? As far as the wheelchair thing, so I'm going to meet with Rich about it, because when I came back here 9 years ago, I asked about doing some curbs. The guy who's down there in the handicap department came up with this stuff about, because when I was the 24th alderwoman, I paved all but 7 of my streets in the whole ward, and we put all new handicaps ramps in. Then he said, oh, you got to do these new ones. The feds and the state said, no, you do not. They put it in writing and told me who it was and told them to call them, said, no, we have not passed that. It is not true. That's been held up for 9 years. That's totally ridiculous. Okay, just because you wish it doesn't make it true. So I'm going to meet with Rich and he to talk about this, because if we don't need to spend that kind of money, and we got wheelchair ramps that are also all right up under the feds. If the city wants us to do updated, then I think the mayor ought to go in her little pocketbook and put the money in. But it should not, ever since we got this money, and I can speak to it because I've been here since the beginning, they found more and more ways that the aldermen should be spending their money. And before we had this money, the city spent their money on this stuff, but they've pushed more and more of this stuff. Oh, this is going to be the alderman. I do agree with you about the planning. I asked LRA to tear down a lot of houses on Union. And if they couldn't, at least to get rid of the taps for the water and the gas, so that when we paved it, we wouldn't have to worry about them coming back. They didn't do that. They didn't respond. I just sent a hot email over, and all of a sudden now they're responding. But so I agree with you, but I'm just saying, if you would give us some kind of updates on what's going on, then we would have a better, we would have a better informed street committee, and we could, and other people who wanted to be here, and then we could let our constituents know. Sometimes I just don't want to keep calling you in here. So I really do try to give you a break, because you know, you got a job to do and you don't have enough people to do it, but we do need to know what's going on. Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, if you guys want to put me on the agenda once a month, I have no problem with that at all.
That'll work for me.
And we have
Okay.
talking points
Right.
here that we've had several today that have follow-up to them.
Okay, and then the other thing, I do have a specific street, and I just sent it again, the 4900 block of Theodore, we were putting speed humps, and then that got held up because of some cave-ins on that street, and we thought, we don't know if it's water. Kurt Scobie told us back it's not them, but suggested it might be MSD. I need you to kind of follow up, because it's MSD sewer lateral, is that up under your you got too many things under you. We need to take some of that out from under. Seriously, no, it's too many. So that I sent that back months and months ago, and I just resent it again because it's getting cold and we need to know what's going on with that street. Okay.
So the street work there was completed. I looked back at this yesterday because I think you sent me an email yesterday or the day before, which I haven't got back to yet. But the street work was completed. There was one sidewalk back in first week of August, I think, that was an old sewer lateral that the sidewalk had not been poured. I was told that week that it was going to be poured. I have not got verification. I was going to send an inspector there yesterday to verify that it was poured. We get busy around here, and I will try to get an inspector by there today or tomorrow morning to verify that that sidewalk was poured. Other than that, I think all the issues in that street were taken care of prior to that August window, whatever date that was.
But so, and I haven't been out there lately because I was sick and in the hospital, had surgery, but I had been out there before, and they did have these holes that were in the street. In fact, we have one right at Marcus and Greer that 30 years ago, they still, every time they fill that with rock, it still comes back. There's an issue. It's on Marcus. There's an issue with that. They don't just come back for no reason. There's a sewer or there's a spring or something. How do we find out what that is? I guess is my question. Because Kurt Scobie says it's not him.
Yeah, some of them are very hard. With Grandin Penrose is a prime example. I think it's Grandin Penrose. That thing, well, the sewer there, the MSD sewer there is almost 40 feet deep.
Okay.
So our MSDs dye tested that where they run water, they put green dye in, and they see if it ever shows up in their sewer. Well, with it being 30, 40 feet deep, you could run thousands of gallons of water through that with bunches of dye. It may not show up for 3 days. And every time we've been on that site, that was kind of the same thing. I believe a few years ago, they actually went in and did a lot of work there at Grandin Penrose. And I don't believe we've had any major issues since. But it really depends on the situation. If it's just a sewer lateral, which is the lateral going from the house to MSD main or MSD's main, those are pretty simple fixes. We have a program for that. Usually it's simple as putting a camera. We have a camera. We've got a contractor that has a camera. That camera into those sewers, verify whether it's broken or not. If it is broken and it's in the city right away, then our program fixes it. If we don't find any problem and there is a cave in or a big depression in the street, that's usually, especially if it's a cave in, that's when we send it over to MSD and have them investigate their side. So anytime we see those, we do our best to investigate them or send them to the parties that need investigated. Like on this one, Scobie took a look at it. We sent it over to MSD. I think MSD televised their main on that entire street. They didn't find any other issues other than the one we had just repaired back in June or July, which hit that in August and had the sidewalk put back in. But in general, I don't want a hole in the street. I don't want to go out and patch a hole today and go back tomorrow and go, where'd my patch go? It's gone. It's gone. It's just sunk a few inches, especially without having people these days. It's definitely not what we like to do, is keep going back and back and back to the same locations.
Right.
So the goal is always to figure out what's the underlying problem. Up till about 6 months or a year ago, we were super short on inspectors also. We had 4 doing about 12 people's worth of work, or 12 people's positions worth of work. So inspectors were kind of doing the bare minimum just to keep moving. But now I think we're 11 out of 12 staffed on inspectors. So that now they have a lot more time to actually investigate and come to real resolutions on these problems, which is fantastic, because at least one group of people actually has staffing.
Okay, so when we have a problem, like you said over at Penrose and Grand, or Marcus and Greer, and it's so deep, is then our go-to just to put as much rock as we can into it until it breaks? Is that really what we're doing, putting a Band-Aid on it?
I mean, honestly, Grand and Penrose, that probably had 3 feet of asphalt on it. But the MSD actually went in, and I mean, it was 3-inch patch, 3-inch patch, and we're talking very big patches, because it was well, I think it was big enough patches. I think we took a paver and put it on it. And it was almost every year until finally there was a big enough hole, and MSD could finally get enough dye and water and everything else in there to figure out where it was actually leaking it. Until you can find that leak,
Okay,
MSD's, I wouldn't dig it up I would not dig it up if it was me, and MSD's not gonna dig it up if it's them until they figure out what the actual issue is. And when they're that deep, it's hard.
okay. So did we do any street paving this year at all?
Yes, we paved about 40 or 50 streets.
You can send me you don't have to you send it to me. I like writing. Send that to me. And
Yep.
then we'll make sure everybody has it.
Yep, absolutely. We paved, I think we had this conversation with other streets committee, but we had a big problem this year. We did not get our equipment back from last winter's maintenance till middle of September. Let's call it September 15th. Usually we start paving the 1st of May. This, of course, put us behind schedule. The good part about that is I didn't attempt to sell much asphalt this year to the alderman, and so that kind of benefited. But we're also out there paving still today, because we thought we were finished up about a month ago. Then there was a Louisiana street calming project that we had to pave because they just finished up the street calming project about 4 weeks ago. Then Alderwoman Peel had a neighborhood where they built at least 7 buildings, large buildings, and that they had just finished up construction, and these streets were in horrible condition after. They were in horrible condition before the construction. They were in way worse shape after the construction, and we're just finishing up there currently. And then next week we've got 2 areas to pave down around the new MLS stadium that they're paying for. So typically, and this is going to lead, I think, into the next conversation here, is typically we never pave after November 1st. The temps are not conducive to paving if we can keep from it. There's decisions made on Louisiana, the area for Alderwoman Peel and MLS, that any paving was better than not having it paved this year. Even if it wasn't a high quality product, which time wise is not a big deal as far as longevity. It's still going to hold up fairly well. You may lose 5 or 10% of the life expectancy by pouring or paving with asphalt in the temps we've had over the last couple of weeks. But the decisions were made on all three of these projects to go ahead and get them done before the weather got too bad.
So let me stop you because my temperature is going up now. So what I hear is that the stadium is getting paved, but none of the streets in North St. Louis, in which I am the person that took the money and put the money there and separated it and put it all around, none of those got paved because we're looking at curb issues and all these things. And you never reached out to any of the aldermen and talk to them about did they want it paved anyway, because Union is absolutely horrible when you get off the right there at the I-70 in Union. If you can't even pave it, you need to go over there and mill it. So I don't understand why we wouldn't have been given the option to say what we wanted done with that money, because that money is sitting there. And I told people about the things and then nothing was happening. So who came up with the whole thing about the curbs and everything else being done? Because nobody told us.
First of all, this was discussed at every capital meeting that we had. If an alderman was there, it was discussed that the ramps, the curb, everything on these major streets had to be completed first. So it was discussed then.
But okay, let's stop right here. But every alderman maybe wasn't at a capital meeting. So then how do they get information?
That's correct. And I guess that's why I need to be at street committee meetings at least once a month.
Okay, but that's now, so there was no way that we were reached out to say, hey, do you want this? Is there some part of Union that we need done right now? Because there is some, and I've waited patiently my turn. And usually, since I've been here a long time, the people who are the chair of streets get treated the best, not the worst, okay? So when I hear somebody just got here and they're over there having conversations with you, I'm feeling some kind of way about it, okay? So I think that when you're making these decisions, that they should not be based on if you have a capital meeting, because aldermen have the right not to have a capital meeting and they still need information.
Everything that was funded out of ward capital this year, other than I believe 2 streets, was completed this year.
We have $7.6 million that is, let me tell you, so what I found with this administration is that anything that has to happen in North St. Louis, it becomes a problem. You gotta wait, you gotta hold on, and then people blame the aldermen. And so then I just say it's the mayors, because these people don't report to us, they report to the mayor. There is always a problem, be it ARPA money, be it street money, be whatever it is. So I'm going to ask Alderwoman Boyd, who represents a good portion of North St. Louis, did anybody ever reach out to you about what was going on? Or did you know what was going on with the monies that we put aside for a good fellow? And I don't know, did we do?
No, I kept asking about it. I think I called Rich Bradley, coincidentally, Alderwoman Tyus, because I remember you said that money was allocated. And so I approached him about those dollars, and then about the paving. I think, man, I don't want to lie on Kent. I want to say Kent, myself, and Donald Wilson, we talked about paving, but I never got an understanding, and that was my whole confusion. I kept never getting an understanding of where this, when this would happen, because I kept getting back and forth. So I never knew when the stuff was going to happen, because ironically, when he was talking about the repairs and stuff, that's a whole nother issue, because I never got it. I kept asking about it and I never got it. One was on North Point, and when Kim was talking about the area where you said Grand and Penrose, well, we were talking about West Florissant and Goodfellow, and they just kept patching and patching, and it keeps sinking. So it's not so much a street on that part. I think it's MSD personally. I really think MSD is slacking. They're not doing what they need to be doing. But as far as paving, I talked to Ken about the paving thing, and I never got an explanation. I never got a reasoning behind why we were doing it or what. The last I heard, he just got his equipment in and they're behind. So that's all I heard.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I don't want to go into this anymore. I want to bring BPS in here, and I want you to come back next week, because I want an explanation about this $7.6 million and what we're waiting on and other things like that. Because again, I am of the I am of the idea that if something like that is going on and we're making great big decisions, that we notify. Again, you do not have to put your hand up, Mr. Wilson. Okay,
Oh,
you'll be
just making
next.
sure we weren't on the,
You'll
I
be
know,
next.
once you went to questions with the other persons, I don't know if it was, if I was supposed to jump in. Are
Right.
we, the 7.5 million, that's the 5 ARPA routes, correct?
It's no, so no. So
Wait, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, in that board bill that's become an ordinance that we did, there was some money left over from some other stuff that I took, and it was $7.6 million, and it's Goodfellow. It's not the it's a whole different thing than the ARPA money. It's Goodfellow. It is
West Florissant.
West Florissant. It's I can't even remember.
Is it Kings Highway? I want to say
Kings Highway was traffic calming and the sprinklers, okay?
Right.
The money to pave it was in a different fund, okay? And I'm not really pushing Kings Highway. I was surprised that it was in that ARPA fund. It was in the ARPA fund. So they had an ARPA fund, and then we had another that was not ARPA fund. It was kind of snuck into that bill. And then we put it, I put it over into North St. Louis to streets that haven't been addressed in a long time. So I'll send you guys, I don't know if you need to be back, Jamie, but I do know BPS and Kit need to be back, because we need to know what's going on with that, because we have to report back to our community, because everybody knew when I got it and we haven't found out what was going on with it. So you're the first person to give us the ugly truth, is what I need to call it. I tell people love pretty lies, but they hate the ugly truth, okay? I don't know, maybe if you all don't know that there was a different pot of money, but it was. It doesn't, some of them have the same streets like Kings Highway because they had paving money, but I also got money because our sprinklers that got put in have been broken forever. So we got money to fix the sprinklers and some other things, okay?
Was that for the mediums, Alderwoman Tyus?
It is.
Okay.
Went down from Martin Luther King to West Florissant.
Right, yeah, Riverview, yeah, the sprinklers.
And then we gave you all money in the media on Goodfellow, like especially in that 22nd ward. Goodfellow looks horrible. So there was money not only for the pavement all the way from, I want to say, Delmar to the city limits, but there was also money addressed to fix the medians and things. So I'll send you all both over that board bill, and then we can discuss what's going on with that. Anybody have any questions about street paving?
No, I just had for repairs, so it wasn't paving.
Okay, Alderwoman Howard had some things about street cleaning. Were you have, did you get an answer about your street cleaning?
Okay, my question, I guess my issue is, you know, when you're running that machine about 25 miles an hour, all you're doing is kicking up stuff and moving it along. Now, to me, we're not picking up leaves, which is fine with me because my ward never had leaf pickup. But if you're going to clean the streets, take enough time to make that machine do what it's supposed to do, not just move the stuff around and make more of a mess. I mean, people push their stuff out into the street so they can pick it up. I mean, Monday morning, the guy came by and I swear he was probably doing 30 miles an hour and back and forth all over the street. And it's like, what the heck? What's the point? You're just wasting gas and energy. It aggravates me. I'd rather just not even have them come if they're going to do a sloppy job and be slovenly about how they approach it. A few years back, I had a woman doing it, and she was meticulous. It was like she was scrubbing my front steps. I mean, she came down and she's looking at every leaf and see if it goes up in there. Now, you know, there's got to be some in between of accountability here. And I talked to Ms. Williams, well, I emailed Ms. Williams, and she said she was going to address it in the meeting that morning. He came Tuesday and he slowed down maybe to 25 or 20 miles an hour. It wasn't much better. And I don't know if, you know, I know we don't have enough staff. I don't know. And it's like, you know, if you're not going to do the job right, give it up. Don't do it. So, and I mean, I was short of running down there and flagging him down and, you know, giving him the riot act, but I was in my nightgown and I didn't think that was appropriate. So And I did talk with Miss Williams about it, so I don't know, is there anybody supervising the cleaning or not?
Is this you also, Mr. Flake?
That's me also. So
Boy, we're just really busting your chops today, aren't we?
it's all right. I'm used to it.
Jamie just shaking his head
Yeah,
like,
well,
There's
oh,
too many
God.
things under him that, the whole public safety department is too big, and I have suggested how to break up the public safety. There are too many things under you, but okay, go ahead.
I said he works 7 days a week. That was not an
I'm sure you
exaggeration.
do.
It is too much.
He literally does.
I understand. I was working in the hospital right before my surgery, and the surgeon came in and said, Alderwoman, do you think you could run City Hall from surgery? And I said, I was doing a good job until you came in here, because I was talking to Alan Jakowski probably half an hour before I had surgery. So I do understand. Go ahead, Mr. Flake.
All right. So I'm going to answer that, but I'm also going to say that I really have to get off here in about 6 minutes to get on
Okay.
at 1 o'clock. But so yes, we have a supervisor in charge of in charge of street cleaning. We have a foreman in charge of street cleaning, and then we have a lower level foreman, all in charge of street cleaning. Typically a normal day, we have 4 to 5 routes in the morning, 4 to 5 routes in the afternoon. Obviously every driver can't be watched all the time. And honestly, that low level foreman is typically on a street sweeper since we are short. I'm sure Joe's going to ask this question here shortly, so I'm going to try to get in front of it. That since we can't say never pave in November, and we're getting ready to pave for the first time in my career in December, come late this week, early next week. Out of our 102 employees, about 50 of those are wrapped up into paving currently, which means all the extra crews or all the extra trucks, the sweepers, the leaf vac machines, bloaters, skid steers, everything that every year that we throw at leaves, which is a problem every year, is currently even less staffed because of those employees being out trying to finish paving these last few streets that we have. By probably next Tuesday, I hope, maybe sooner, that paving crew will be shut down, and then everyone essentially at the street division will be working in these street cleaning areas, which means these street sweepers hopefully will slow down, because now they're just trying to get as much done in their route as they possibly can by going 20, 25 mile an hour, which I know it's not a good job. You guys know it's not a good job. But they're trying to get something done, which is actually probably creating as much of a mess as actually fixing anything. But by this time next week, assuming it's not snowing, that should start to come together, and we should see a lot of headway. Our complaints for street cleaning in the month of November are about 4 to 5 times higher than they were last November, because of all of the people that it takes and the equipment that it takes to pave these streets. Hopefully, like I said, it starts to come together early to mid next week, and hopefully the leaf / street cleaning issues will all die down very shortly after.
Well, I mean, the leaves are done falling, and yes, it's going to die down, but I guess what my concern is, sometimes people don't move their cars. There's all kinds of problems associated with it, but I don't understand what going that fast does, as far as if you've got 2 routes, you've got time for them, it seems like. But, putting the pedal to the metal and just rearranging the leaves, to me, is just not the way to approach it. And I don't know, do they get to go home when they're finished? Is that the motivation?
No, not at all.
Okay.
No, and we do have drivers. I've got a couple in particular that I personally have seen many times, and anytime I see him out in the route, Commissioner Streets is pulling over this street sweeper driver and reminding him that we don't need to be sweeping at a rate any greater than 12 mile an hour. And even better, depending on what's on the ground. I mean, if you have piles of leaves, 12 mile an hour. You have piles of leaves, probably 2 mile an hour is probably too fast.
Yeah,
a
it's just almost, yeah, why bother? Why waste the gas and the time, you know? To me, it's just like, well, never mind. Don't even bother coming out if you're not going to do anything with it and do the job correctly. So, well, I've gotten my complaint. And the other thing is, when you were talking about paving, I would just like to say there hasn't been much paving down here in the 14th ward either. And I guess, you know, I know you're short staffed and you're waiting for the ARPA funds and Spire to get out of the way, and it's a mess. So, but thank you, and hopefully spring will come and we'll have new streets and it'll be all bubble gum and rainbows. Okay.
I
Thank
have
you.
a question. So the street cleaners, isn't there a better machine that just gets up leaves if we had it in a better world than just street cleaning?
We have some machines made in the 80s, which we have duct taped and baling wire and everything else to keep them running since the mid 80s. They are not made anymore because I don't think it's legal to make them anymore.
Okay,
And they do a fantastic job, but it requires 3 people to actually operate one of these. Typically, if we weren't paving, we would have 4 of those on the street at all times. We also have another truck that's kind of got an elephant trunk that comes off the side that
Right.
picks up leaves that many of you have also seen. It's better than a street sweeper. It's not as good as the machines made in the 80s. It's kind of in between. And honestly, probably the last couple of years, our front end loaders, our Bobcats and that stuff have actually done more with leaves than probably anything else.
okay.
The biggest thing with leaves is they're so bulky. So a street sweeper, if you got a pile of leaves in front of your house, may only be able to make it 20 feet without having to go empty the hopper, which is not good. And then those leaves are going into a dump truck or a roll-off truck, and they're whole leaves, which is the biggest problem with leaves, is they're just bulky. If we could get those mulched up at some point, which is what we do with our mulch master and the other truck, then you can actually do useful things with them. Just because I think the mulchers, one's like 12-to-1 reduction rate and one's either 8 or 9-to-1 reduction rate. So just being able to shred those off, put them in a truck, that means I'm carrying either 9 or 12 loads of unchopped up leaves across town to the dump. So obviously that takes a lot of vehicles to do that. So it's always best to be able to use one of the mulchers, whether it would be the one with the trunk or the other one.
Are there, so, and you said these are back from the 80s. Do we have any updated machines, mulchers that we could maybe purchase 1 or 2 that would do the job and wouldn't need 3 or 4? Because to me, we need to look toward, if we're going to have less staff, we need to look toward having machines that don't need that many people on it.
Well, to be quite honest with you, we demo them all the time and most of them don't work.
Okay,
A lot of landscape contractors will use the trailer mounted ones. People probably seen those. We actually had those allegedly had those. I wasn't around for them in the mid-90s. And those you have to manually move the suction tube. And within a couple of years, we stopped using them because of workers' comp claims and injuries on the job.
Okay, so the 80s ones are still the best ones. You just need more staff. And
Yes,
can you still order those? Are they made anymore? So what are we gonna do when they break? Because sooner or later, we're not gonna be able to put duct tape and wire and hanger wire.
it's been working pretty good so far, but we've actually got a company that makes most of the parts for that locally, after dealing with them for many, many years. We had one catch on fire, I think about 3 years ago, which took us from, I think, 5 to 4 or 6 to 5. So that was kind of a sad day. But on the bright side, we have the parts left over from that one that didn't catch on fire that were reusable on the other ones. At some point, it's going to be a problem. There are other solutions, but we've never found anything nearly as effective or efficient as these machines from the 80s.
You didn't get around the alderman from the 23rd Ward. Now, Mr. Flake said he has to go. So Alderman, unless anybody else has any pressing questions, you get to make him come back to what you want to talk about. You're muted.
I know, I'm getting there, Ken, this has to do with the leaf cleaning, leaf pickup. Because this is like, they're killing me right now on that. Just so you know, why not, let's make this simple on ourselves. We got the signs, the streets that didn't get done, because what happens is they follow the same route. If they don't finish the route, they move on to another route, which means there's people that haven't had their streets swept in 2 and 3 months because it ends up there at the end of the route. We used to put the signs out, street cleaning this Wednesday. Why don't we get those streets that weren't done? I'm calling Nancy Rice about this too. Put them signs out and let's get the rest of these
Nancy
leaves off the
Cross, we
street.
don't want to call Nancy Rice, then we'd have to go back to the Shamo administration.
Well, I mean, I just want, I mean, there is a solution to this. And it's not a tough solution. Put the signs out on the streets where we got the complaints. I was in the mayor's office picking up something yesterday. And even the secretary at the desk is like, oh my gosh, I'm getting tons of calls too. I mean, Channel 2 did a story, you park on these leaves, your car catches on fire. Andy Banker was talking to me about this again yesterday. Why can't we put the signs out to finish up the streets that we're not done? Is there a reason we don't have any special equipment? Put the signs out so people know don't park on that side of the street so we can get this wrapped up. What's the issue with that?
Then tomorrow there's going to be another 20% that we're not getting done. And it just keeps overlapping and overlapping and overlapping and overlapping. So if I circle back today to pick up what I missed yesterday, that means I'm missing 40% of a route in somebody else's work.
I'm talking about do it Saturday and Sunday if we have to. The same people are not getting picked up. And it's a big issue. I mean, they still ticket their cars, but it's the same issue. At least on trash, which I also get a tremendous amount of complaints about. They are working on the weekends to get things caught up. Once the leaves are up, the problem goes away. This isn't something that's going to keep, they work one weekend, get it picked up, get it done. It's over. It's over till next year. Why can't we do that?
I honestly don't have any employees that want to work most every weekend anyway. Used to, I could ask people to work a Saturday or Sunday. I'd have volunteers out of the woodwork. Now, if I ask people to work a Saturday, I may get 6 volunteers at best.
Well, it only takes one person to drive that truck and another person, so you only need 2.
And those guys are here every weekend picking up illegal dumping every weekend, same 6.
So we just tell the people, keep paying your taxes. I got just my one car, my Traverse. was $1,100 was my personal property tax on that one car. We taxed I gotta watch my language, but we taxed the heck out of people. And yet we're not going to accept an excuse as to why you're not paying. You don't, oh, well, I'm only going to pay part of my taxes because I didn't work as much this year. No, we're going to penalize them. Yet we're going to just give them excuses about their leaves. And it isn't like just 1 month, it's 2 months. 10, it's a problem and it has to be fixed. I don't care if the mayor, I don't care if I'll go out with you. Me and you can go sweep the leaves in the middle of the street and do it. I don't care. But it's an issue. And I know that you can give me the, well, the other part don't get done. I get they move on to the next route. They should be reversing these routes every other month so that everybody's getting picked up. But right now, there is a major issue on the streets with leaves. And it's really going to get nasty because over here, like I said, Andy Banker talked to me about it yesterday. Over here, you're going to get the same story. And the story in St. Louis Hills where the car caught on fire. Because you park on these leaves and your catalytic converter will set the car on fire. So, I mean, to tell me, gee, you know what, we don't have people, the sun was in our eyes, whatever. Kent, this is not acceptable. I need a real solution. It's got to come from you or the mayor's office, but I want a real solution as to how we're going to get these leaves picked up.
The real solution is people. There's ways to fix people. It's very simple to get employees into the city.
Then we should give the people a giant tax break because we're not paying all these employees. We should have tons of money left over then let's give the money back to the people. I mean, this is frustrating to me. And I'm just telling you, Jamie, you have family in this neighborhood too, in my ward, with lots of trees on the street. And when the leaves don't get picked up and things don't get picked up, I get the phone calls. And believe me, that's all I've been doing. If it isn't trash, it's leaves. You got to come up with a better system. I don't care what it is, but we can't just tell the people, well, you're just out of luck. So
I agree with that 100%, Joe. You know I do. We've talked about leaves.
Well,
I've been here.
So when we go down and we protest in front of the mayor's office or city hall or something like that, is that what it's going to take to get a solution to this? Because it seems like we're very reactive and very not proactive. I wouldn't even care, except my chest was killing me yesterday from the stress. Because my phone would ring, but my block didn't get done. Joe, they did half the street. I can show you the videos they're sending me. I mean, it's unfair to me, and I'm sure any other alderman that's dealing with this. The 23rd ward, as it sits, has more trees than any other ward in the whole city. And we have a very big leaf problem. And I don't care. We got to do it on a weekend. You want to get the truck out? I'll go with you. We'll go pick the leaves up. I want them out of I want a solution for the people that have been calling me. And the solution isn't just, well, we want you to pay your high taxes, but don't worry about us. We accept our excuses. It's people tell me all the time, we're tired of the excuses. Trees aren't being trimmed. Trash isn't being picked up. These are not your things. I get it. The street sweeping is your thing. And it needs to be taken care of. I don't care. Put the signs out. Get some volunteers for the weekend. I don't care. I'm interested in the complaints I'm getting. If any other aldermen want to call you about their complaints, they can. So I just want to make sure that the 23rd ward leaves that I've been getting complaints about get picked up. Everybody else, maybe they're not having that problem. I guarantee you I am having that problem. And I want them picked up. So we can talk offline, but I want to come up with a solution. In the past, I know Todd used to go out there and maybe had more people because they had to rake the leaves out between the cars because it wasn't done. And then they would run the street sweeper down the middle, which still I thought was kind of crazy because I still think you could have put the sign out, had the people move the cars, and you could have went straight down the street. But it's got to be taken care of. I mean, again, it's going to be a news story here anyway. But I hate that we have to keep being reactive to all this stuff instead of proactive. And I'm asking you, you can call me offline, you know, and I got to call in again, you know, to Nancy Cross. There has to be a solution to get the leaves up, because what's going to happen, they're going to go down the sewer. It's going to block the sewer. We're going to have backed up basements. I'm just telling you, you call me offline, Kent, but it's got to be a solution. Anyway, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I will quit venting for a minute here now.
And I'll give you a call later, Joe.
Okay, thanks, Kent. I would appreciate that.
Mr. Commissioner Flake says he has to go. So if anybody doesn't have any more questions, we're gonna let him go. I have one street lighting question. If anybody has anything, that's for Jamie. So anybody have any questions for Mr. Flakes? Because we can let him go if you don't. Anyone? Thank you very much. But I do need you back here next week because BPS and you are going to get this straight. Because I did invite Rich. And so I'm going to say he kind of tricked me a little bit. Okay. So we will be picking up this discussion about what happens with that money and how the bidding process goes. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Have a good day. Mr. Wilson. I want to start out with my question was about street lighting. When Deanna Vaneker was still here, and I guess she was the director then, I emailed her because we started putting in a new street lighting. And then I got a lot of backlash from my constituents saying that when you put the lights in, that they, the side that they put the lights in, the other side would get really good lighting. But the side where the pole was not getting good street lighting, and it was darker. I went over there, that was a valid complaint. My husband does green energy, so I talked to his engineers and things like that. And I even sent back to the person who was the head of lighting at that time. I can't remember his name now. And so what the problem with that was, they said is that a lot of times if you're on parking lots and things like that, they have double-headed lights, because if you just focus a light one way, it goes out and it then does not cover where the pole is. And so I'm just, you know, I asked him back then, and that's been years ago, is there something that we could do that we could change the, I guess it's called the head. It's another term that my husband uses, but I can't remember, but the head. So maybe do we need to put two heads on the lighting, because it's a significant difference of what they are projecting out across the street versus what's there. So can you talk to me about that? And I can take you to some of the streets to show you what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I may actually have to see that. I don't know, is it maybe an LED versus one of our older lights in comparison, or?
It's the LED, the new ones that they were complaining about, not the older ones, okay?
One LED compared to another LED?
It was
different.
We went on the street in the 4800 block of, I want to say Carter or Calvin. And so we put new street lights on it. And so all the people on the side of the street where the poles are, all complained and said that it was darker on their side. Now the people across the street where the light was projecting was fine with it. But so I'm just wondering if with the LEDs, are we getting less light in a certain spot or something like that? And like I said, I talked to the engineers, and they did say, if you ever notice on a parking lot, they don't just have a one-headed light or whatever it's called. They have two heads so that it spreads all over. And so I'm wondering if that's something that might be available for us, because they're feeling like they're in the dark now. And I went over there and they're not totally wrong, is what I'll say.
Yeah, let's look at that. I mean, it could be a number of things, I guess. I think the older lights have more of a backsplash on them.
Okay.
That was what you'd consider bonus lighting. We're we're here to light the streets, but it kind of threw back a lot onto tree lawn or maybe even the yard, depending on the circumstance. But let's just look at it instead of me guessing. Let's just go out and look at it together.
Okay, so, but if we decide it's a problem, and which I mean, I know I would have to pay for it, is there a possibility we might be able to put another head on the lightings? I know that would entail cost or some other way, I don't know, that we can do, because a lot of these people who are in my ward are seniors. So it's dark and they're frightened. So I want them to feel comfortable and to stay here. So I'm just throwing that out to you now. And I want to say, I don't know if that guy's name was Al or whatever. I have to look up I'll pull the email up, but I would like to have some kind of reply, because after all this time, I never got anything back. And I know Deanna's been gone, what, 4 or 5 years now? Has it been that long? 3?
I think she left in December of 19, I believe.
It's almost 3 years now. Okay, so I want to circle back because I had that come up at a meeting.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else have any issues with street lighting?
I do.
Okay,
Jamie and we have had conversation. It's back to Deanna. When she came to me at 18 or 19 and said, you just give me this amount of money and then you'll have all your lights replaced. That never happened. I allocated the dollars and I'm still waiting to find out where are we with the lighting. Because my ward was 27 was supposed to have, all these lights changed out. So I never got that. I have streets that still have the old lighting on there.
Yeah, those records weren't very well kept back then. We'll make that whole. I'll get that fixed for you.
Okay, and I think my frustration is it seems like that's an ongoing story with you guys. Whoever was leading that charge never kept accurate records. And so, you talk to all the people, they make the recommendations, you say, okay, and then nothing happened. And so it kind of, and the residents are looking at you like, okay, so what happened to the lights? We were supposed to get the lights. So that was my issue. So I think my frustration, I can't speak for anybody else, I always have to micromanage and keep coming back. I have to keep asking, well, where are we with this? And what happened with this? So if it's some way, as Alderwoman Tyus said, the communication could be improved, I think that would help a lot of things and reduce you all stress, because then we kind of know what's going on.
No, I agree and echo what Ken said about making more regular appearances here. I'd rather be a frequent flyer to the committee than a guy that's invited once every couple of years, when that's not usually a good thing when you're invited. So
set your toes on fire.
yeah.
So my other question, like, how those monuments that have the domes that have the lights in them, how do you get those replaced? Because when you have them out, so is that, will we use our ward capital to replace those lights?
Yeah, I would say usually anything that's not our typical Cobra lights,
Right.
specifically on monuments that were constructed with ward capital, that would be a ward capital replacement, unless it's something trivial, wiring some small miscellaneous equipment that we could repair it with. If it involves a new fixture or something like that, that would be something we'd have to come back to you guys, because we're not budgeted for specialized stuff like that. But if it's just miscellaneous general wiring type stuff, we can try to resolve it ourselves without additional cost to the alderpersons.
Okay, because the portrait column interest way, we've always had problems, and I had paid a lot for that interest column before for a light, and now the light is out again. So I'm just trying to figure out, what do we need to do? Do we need to replace it with something else to keep from coming back to doing it over and over again, or what?
Okay,
It's not
yeah.
the light bulb, is it?
The last time Alderwoman Tyus, it was what Jamie said, and I had to use ward capital to repair that light. And so it was something in the inner workings of that whole system. And so I don't know if it's another way we can keep from going, keep doing that. Because I do know, I love Greg Carter to death, but he's killing me with these darn decorative lights, because those things are so expensive to replace once they're broke or they go out. And so trying to keep that Riverview section lit up is just such a stressful thing, and it's using a lot of ward capital. So that's why I was asking, is there something else we could do? And that portrait sits right in front of the firehouse. And once it's right, it looks beautiful, but it's just the lights, trying to keep them working and in order.
Do we have an insurance program for those lighting? Because all of mine up along West Florissant mostly have been hit, and previous alderperson put them there. And to me, when they start telling me $20,000 per post, I'm not doing that. Okay. I don't know why he did it in the first place, but that's ridiculous. So is there a way, do we have any kind of insurance program? Because mine is like, if we don't have an insurance program to replace it, I can't keep going in there. You're talking about putting $20,000 a post. That wasn't a good placement of ward capital.
Right.
You know, Jamie?
No, I'll just say when we have any city-owned infrastructure that's hit as part of accidents, if we're able to get the information, police reports, and it's part of that, we go after the insurance companies to compensate the city for it. I mean, it goes back to general revenue, but it's still city recovering funds. We probably.
Excuse me, stop right. It goes back to general revenue, but we paid for it. Why then wouldn't we get that money back? Because then when we want to replace it, how is it in general revenue and not, and how are we responsible for paying to replace it, but we don't get the money if we collect insurance?
I don't know. I'd love for our Cobras, the Cobra lights I pay for, they get knocked down. I like to get the money back too.
Okay, so that's something we need to
I'm just
look
saying, I don't know. I don't understand that level of that.
Okay.
Could be a very simple or a very complex answer to that. I
Oh,
really
no.
don't know.
The city is greedy and they just try to take whatever they can from us. And to me, if you're either you are going to pay for it if it gets hit, you're going to pay for the maintenance, or if you get hits and we got to pay for it, then we should be reimbursed our money. So I will find out. I will call the comptroller's office, or no, the Paul Payne, the budget's office. I'm sorry.
Yes, when they have when cars are hitting like the monuments or the lights, and I had started questioning, well, why are we going after those people that we catch with insurance? Why are we charging them back for that? Why do I have to keep paying to get these replaced? And so I know they were looking for, even with those boulders, they were looking up accident reports to start going after the people they had the cars that hit those to charge it back to them.
So we need a tracing system. That's
Right.
what it is. We need a system. Okay. Anything else, Alderwoman Boyd?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Vaccaro?
Yeah, just going from my hand down. Jamie, just quickly, my understanding, all the city lights are supposed to be converted to LED now. And when's that going to happen? I mean, I'm still waiting for them in my ward. I keep telling people because they keep asking me, and I keep saying, well, it should be soon. I know I have lights that are out. I've been calling you. I think I got a couple more to send you, and I guess we're doing them one at a time. But when do you think they're going to actually be put into our ward and finished up?
We're going to be bidding that out. We've got 4 million to finish the city out, in addition to whatever wasn't funded before that we're doing ourselves, like yours. The 4 million we got through ARPA, we're going to set up a new contract that's compliant with all the ARPA rules for spending that money to put out. I don't remember how many it was, 12,000, for example, LEDs. That's a little above and beyond our guys. So we're going to have a contractor come in and do those installations. So we're setting up that contract with BPS to bid it out. We'll purchase them through city funds more than likely because we have it on contract and probably a better cost than the contractors will be getting. But regardless, it'll be set up through BPS to bid it out and have the contractors roll out and get that finished within the acceptable time frame for ARPA.
So, as I'm calling them in one by one, lights are out, you're replacing them. You got plenty of stuff to do that now.
Oh yeah, we're replaced. I mean, last I looked, we probably have over 200 single lights out that we're getting to. And we're trying to hit the oldest ones first.
Okay, because I know I think I only got a few left, but you know, I mean, I get ridden about it pretty hard.
No, I know, and you hear about it, and we've got the calls here directly to us. Not specifically your ward, but the residents call us directly as well. So I'm hearing it too.
Okay, I mean, you know, again, anyway, so your guesstimate, are we talking like 6 months, a year? Or, you know, you're talking about bidding it out and everything. Just a guess. I know you can't be accurate. Just a guess.
I mean, I'd say a year and a half at most. I'm assuming a contractor have the ability to jump on it right away. We bid it out beginning of this year. They get started with it this summer. A year from then, maybe they'll go through it quicker. I don't know.
I mean, so it hasn't been a bid out yet, though. I guess so. They're waiting.
No, it has not.
Okay. Thanks, Jimmy. I would just, that way I can at least pass along, and I'll keep sending in my broken lights.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Wilson. I appreciate it. Been a long almost 3.5 hours. And so now I need to go get me something to eat. And I hope everybody else goes to lunch. And I don't need you next week. So I'm making that clear now. I need BPS. I'll probably have Kent Flakes back, and probably the man from the downstairs in the basement who makes these decisions about these curb cuts. So thank you again. I appreciate it. Thank everybody on the committee. I know this ran a little long, but I think we cleared up some things, and I appreciate it. And at this point, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
No. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.